All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with me here on a Sunday night. So like all the usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering to anyone who has a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you would like that as well, there's always a link in the description, as well as join buttons, various other places here on the video page and the channel page. But anyway, so I see we have Brian here, who's been a member for 13 months. Thanks so much, Brian. He says, I saw on the freeway today 2 C8 Corvettes in blue. And Kyle also saw Rapid Blue C8 today. Nice. It's the day for C8s. I think I saw one maybe today or 1 or 2 this weekend. They're fairly common sights these days, at least in the summertime around here, but always fun to see. I said we have also B. Mitchell, Grand, Luke, Yavinder, Goth, Cars, Charming, Jewel, Justin, Cam. Thank you all so much for joining in, Sean. And Charlottetown Spud, thank you so much for the first super chat of the night. They're asking, any chance we ever get an affordable minivan ever again? These are supposed to be for families with young children. I have 4 young boys and life is expensive. Miss the base Dodge Caravan. I completely agree. And I don't know if you saw the weekly update where I was complaining about just that with the Honda Odyssey dropping the EX trim here for 2025 and going to EXL only. It just, it makes no sense. I mean, people need, family haulers, and it annoys me as well. I think, it's a shame. Like even Chrysler tried with a Voyager, which was kind of like a slightly cheaper Pacifica. It was kind of an odd execution, but at least the intent was there to make a low-cost Pacifica, and I appreciated them for that, And as far as if we will ever see any others, it just comes down to market conditions. And, this is the same thing that was said whenever, there was all the markups during COVID and stuff of, the markups wouldn't happen if people quit buying, but people keep supporting these things. And so that's why. So if you if I think just what we have to do is stick to our guns. And like, seriously, if, you're tired of cars being expensive, then don't buy expensive cars. Make sure, don't go out and buy a new van and, put your money where your mouth is and buy a used one that's at the price point that is affordable for you. It's unfortunate that that has to be the case and you can't buy something new for a reasonable price, but, it's one of those things where no one's putting their foot down. And so, it's just this thing that companies are getting away with murder because, they're able to. And I just actually saw a post about how since I think 2020 or 2021, Chipotle, a random not car thing, but like they've raised their prices like 4 times. And it was, there were supply shortages and all these different things, but then they never brought their prices back down. And then, everyone blamed inflation, which is partially to blame, but not entirely to blame. And Chipotle, I think they said just this past quarter, I think, or at some point recently, their profits are up 110%. If you're just getting by and you're just covering your costs with higher prices, you would not have record profits. The same thing with oil companies. They have record profits too. Every corporation out there, not everyone, but most of them, a lot of them have record profits. And that just means that they're like, oh, sweet, we have a new excuse with inflation to now price gouge people, and they don't actually need to raise their prices that much. And again, I don't know the details behind, supply chains for cars or what the actual cost is to build these things. So I don't have, the inside scoop there as far as how badly car companies are price gouging. Maybe some of them are, maybe some aren't. Maybe, they're just following trends. I don't know, but like, a lot of companies, if a company's having record profits right now, pick whatever company you want. If their profits are record right now, that's to me like bad news, because that's just showing that, people don't have a lot of money right now. You don't need to make record profits, and you don't need to be paying your executives, tens of millions of dollars and then cry about how everything's so expensive and all this. Like, it's just like, it's crushing anyone who doesn't have money to burn, and it sucks. And we see it everywhere, but I have no patience for any company. And so that's why I called Honda out this week with that in the weekly update. And I'm gonna let companies have it whenever they do this stupid crap, because like, I'm sure again the data shows like, oh, people only buy EXLs for the Odyssey, but like, they only buy EXLs probably because that's all that's stocked on dealer lots, or that's the only thing they can find or whatever. And people just take what they can find. And you got to just quit taking what you can find and go for the longer drive. Find the used one that's the right price or whatever, because repossessions are at record highs. all kinds of stuff is just getting out of control, and it's because spending's getting out of control, pricing's getting out of control. Everyone's biting off more than they can chew, and they're put in a bad spot because companies are just so greedy, and it makes my blood boil. So apologies for the soapbox right here to start off the live stream, but that's something I'm very passionate about. So I'm right there with you, Charlottetown Spud, and yeah, I gotta say, just quit buying expensive cars. Everyone just like stop doing it if you want to send a message that, you know, people want this. Because I mean, Honda brought back the LX for the Accord and the Civic because enough people were like, I'm not buying a Civic if it's $30,000. They're like, okay, fine, we'll bring back the LX. And you know, we just need more pushback. We need more of that. But the only way you can send that message is with your money. And so if the new car market would actually collapse, like, I mean, I don't want to say it needs to, but I think that there needs to be a correction of a dose of reality for pricing for any good for that matter, but especially car companies getting so out of hand with the pricing and the, you know, everyone needing heated and cold seats and all this crap. Like, you don't need to start with top trims. You know, EXL used to be like the loaded up luxe top of the line Odyssey back in the day. You don't need to start with that as the, you know, base trim now. It's just ridiculous. So we got to just start pushing back. And, you know, maybe if we do see some kind of market correction just in general, you know, for the economy or something, like maybe that will finally bring them back to reality and realize that, you know, people can't afford to keep up like this. It's just crazy. Anyway, I will move on, but thank you, Charlottetown Spud, for the super chat as well, and best of luck out there with a search for an affordable minivan. And Justin, thank you for being a member for 13 months now. I really appreciate that. He said, I saw my first CO6 out in public the other day. Sounded amazing, and it was my first time hearing the flat plane V8 in person. That's awesome. I'm sure it didn't let you down with sounding amazing. They are so good to hear. It's even better than the Voodoo V8 from the Shelbys, but even those, every time I see one of those, I got to roll my windows down and listen to that glorious engine note. It's awesome you got to see one, so I'm happy you got to check that out. And Sean, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, I'm hoping with Ford's EVs losing value that I'll be able to afford a Lightning in a few years. I know it doesn't tow well, but fast trucks are cool. Absolutely. And, you know, the Lightning is a good value if you can get it, you know, for a reasonable price. I think it can be really solid. I mean, even right now with the deals on new ones, I think they've finally become a better value, you know, depending on the trim and stuff. But yeah, I mean, hopefully they will, you know, drop nicely. And I think that'll really help, you know, more people, you know, adopt the EVs whenever they're super cheap, like our Mach-E now being worth under $30,000. Glad we, you know, leased it, because that would have been not good if you bought one of those things. But thank you again, Sean, for the super chat there. And Daniel, thank you for a super chat as well. He says, since you love cabriolets, Murano Cabriolet. That would be a fun car to you know, have a new car, you know, like a bullet replacement, even though the bullet's been gone for many months now. But yeah, Muranos are, from my experiences, not very good to drive. It'd be hilarious. I know, you know, Savage East does their videos with them and all that. But speaking of cabriolets, my interesting spot of the week that I like completely forgot, the Audi A3 convertible. I completely forgot those existed for many years. And then just this week, I'm like, oh, wow, an A3 convertible, sweet. And then I saw two more. Like, I've gone probably 5 years without seeing an A5 or an A3 convertible, at least one that registered in my brain when I saw it. And then I saw three this week, and I'm like, man, like, what a cool idea. It's essentially like a GTI convertible. And I'm like, you know, something like that could even be like a fun little potential bullet replacement. I mean, use German cars. I should follow my own advice and stay far away. But with an extended warranty, I know those are probably out of the certified period, so it might be tough to get an extended warranty on one. But, and I think they did also the S3 convertible. I'm not sure if they did RS3. It's been, again, a long time since I've looked into that. But I'm like, one of those would be a fun little runaround, because I feel like if I were to get another car, which I probably won't for a long while, but if I were, I feel like I've always wanted a convertible and I've never checked that box. So that would be kind of like the next mountain to climb for me, would probably be something convertible, especially since it's the nature of a car that I would own will be very rarely driven, more of a pleasure vehicle anyway. So, you know, a convertible would be great. And I'd go for a Miata or something, but I just need a back seat. So I need a convertible with a back seat, which basically limits my options to a Mini, or like, you know, the Audi convertibles or the BMW convertibles, and maybe the Mercedes. But, you know, it'd have to be something like that, because no one else makes a regular thing outside of the muscle car. things. And I think again, I wouldn't want to go to the muscle car side again, because then I would just end up missing the Mustang. So I would probably steer clear of any of those, other, like the Camaro or something. But yeah, Murano cabriolets, I see those actually every once in a while. For how rare they are, I'm kind of surprised how often I see them, but it's always a fun one to spot. And thank you, Daniel, for the super chat as well. And then getting back to other member questions here. So Grant says, greetings from Montana. Luke says, hey, Matt, does the brand new Tacoma have wireless Android Auto on the smaller screen? I believe so. I think it's standard wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto across the board, regardless of which one you get. That's the really nice thing about the new Toyota infotainment system. And I see Yavinder and Goth saying hello. And Cars says, time for another awesome live chat. Appreciate you tuning in, Cars. And let me see. Joel says, hey, I made it. Hope everyone is doing well. Thanks for joining in, Joel. And Cam Jam also says hi. And let me see. Goth says, hello, everyone. I made it tonight at the beginning for once. So thanks for joining in. Goth, hope you're doing well. Evander says, I see C8s daily in my city. Yeah, it's almost daily for me as well. It's always fun. They're always regular ones. I'm always like, oh, I wonder if it's a Z06, and then it's not. The regular ones are cool too, but the Z06 is what gets me really excited. And Good Stick says, saw Cybertruck at Fred Meyer yesterday. Nice. Yeah, my mother-in-law saw one for the first time this week, and it's pretty funny. And Beth has finally seen one out in the wild, because she strangely hadn't seen one. Everyone else kept seeing them, and she hadn't yet. So she finally saw one. And yeah, they are getting more and more common, at least around here. So we will see how that plays out. But I think it actually, I thought I saw that it was the best-selling electric truck for at least this past quarter, this past month, something recent. So it seems like they're actually churning out a decent amount of them, kind of more than I was expecting, honestly. But yeah, very polarizing vehicle. And Good Stick says Toyota has an LE Sienna though. In theory, but I actually knew someone that was shopping for Siennas, and it was next to impossible to get an LE, because there's no ordering with Toyota. It's just getting whatever is shipped to you. And, as far as the dealer goes, and so you got to do the labor as the customer to drive to whatever dealer has whatever, matches up with what you're looking for. And a lot of people won't do that. So they just, again, take whatever is shipped. And so Toyota just probably ships higher trims. They're the higher profit ones. And again, people have no problems. I think Sienna still has a wait list, if I've heard correctly from various dealers, or they sell very quickly once they arrive. So again, if you're Toyota, you're one of those kind of positions, and you can't build Siennas fast enough, sure, juice the profits. And again, it's up to the consumer again to push back, to send the message so they quit shipping fully loaded ones or whatever. I mean, I think Toyota does do a decent mix of. I don't want to beat up on them either. Yeah, every company has their strategy and their good reasons for doing whatever they're doing. But again, I just hope that we all send the message quit making expensive cars. But and Wheatman says, good evening, Matt. Thanks for joining in, Wheatman. And Cam Jam says, happy 1 year as a member to me. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Cam Jam, for being a member for a year. I really appreciate the support. And I see you got the new badge there for 12 plus months. So yeah, thanks so much for the support. And Cars says, closest thing that comes to my mind is Kia Carnival. Carnivals, though, aren't super cheap either. I haven't looked at the pricing. Do we have? I don't know if we have pricing for the new refresh 2025s. But, I mean, yeah, Carnival isn't a hot seller. So, even, again, Sienna's super hot. Odyssey's a pretty strong seller. But if you want a deal, I, recommend checking out a Pacifica or that Carnival. Because again, something that's a little slower selling, you got more leverage there to twist the salesman's arm and get some more money off, and maybe bring it down to a better price point. But yeah, and Carnival's great. I reviewed one a couple years ago. No one watched it, and I mean, I totally get it. It's a minivan, but I really like the Carnival. It looked great. I honestly think this new refresh kind of is a downgrade in the looks department, because the other one looked like a Range Rover minivan essentially. It's super nice inside, aside from the miles of piano black plastic, but everything else is really good in it. And so yeah, Carnival's solid. You got a regular V6, it's pretty tried and true kind of setup too, so should be pretty stout. But Michelle says, someone in my neighborhood bought a Lotus Emira in yellow. Pretty cool car. Nice. That's awesome. Emiras, I thought they had said they were delaying them more or something. because there was an issue with production or something. But I'm glad your neighbor was able to get one. That's great. And so yeah, hopefully we start to see some more of those pop up. There's a Lotus dealer like 15 minutes from my house, so I'm hoping that especially I'm in a fortunate position that I get to see a decent amount of Amiras potentially. We'll see. Good Stick says Toyota still has the LA models, right? And that's really great. I mean, it's not, Honda again has the LXs, Toyota has the LEs. And, the other companies, again, this is why Sentra is selling really well right now, because they are priced cheaper than Civic and all that. This is why Versa had the huge price spike or huge sales spike, because I think people are starting to figure out, like, you know what, a Nissan Versa meets my needs. Like, it's transportation, it has smartphone integration, so I can do all my phone stuff. I get from point A to point B, and, I got enough space. And I think some consumers in general, again, are just now finally being like, you know what, like, I can live with a little less, and finally compromising in a world where not much compromise is really, ever needed. We have very minor first world problems, but, we've, usually don't have to sacrifice as much as people had to back in the day, in many ways. But yeah, and I mean, a lot of car companies do a good job with, doing base trims still. There was a company that, can't remember what it was, where they were churning out a bunch of base models, and I was impressed with it, but I don't remember who it was. It was a recent thought too, but I can't recall right now. But yeah, some do a better job than others for sure. You see, the vendor says, I heard Chevy dealers are reducing the Silverado EVs by 20% under MSRP to get them off the lot. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think this is part of why, like GM was saying this week, they're kind of put off the production expansion of the second factory for the Silverado till 2026 for the EVs, because it's so expensive. I mean, I reviewed it, and I mean, that was another video that no one watched the review because there's just so little interest in that, because I can't remember what the one I had was like $95,000, and then you had hard plastic on the inside and stuff. It's an impressive truck, and if you want an electric truck and you don't want a Lightning or a Cybertruck, it's a great other option. I think competition is always good. I'm happy to see more competitors, for better or for worse. They're out there, and so that hopefully improves everybody's offerings and pricing and all that. Yeah, it's a tough market. I think that is one of the areas where customers are finally pushing back. Not only do you have like the EV early adopter thing kind of slowing down, but it's just that I think that companies are finally starting to see the end of buyers for $100,000 pickup trucks in general, gas or electric. Like, there's only so many. I know we have record amount of millionaires in America and stuff, but like, there's only so many, people making tons of money that can afford 6-figure trucks responsibly. And I think that, again, we are in this like fever haze of fever dream of all these people buying all these expensive trucks, and like, sweet, we can churn out these $100,000 trucks like there's no tomorrow. And it's like, I think they're finally starting to see this is something that's not going to be a sustainable production and sales model, because it's just I think a lot of truck buyers, they still just want a good solid truck, and they don't need to have massaging seats and all this other crazy stuff. So yeah, I'm glad to see the discounts there. And it's just going to be a learning thing too, with, again, trying to ride this wave of growing EV demand. But it'll have faster periods, slower periods, and it's just always this guessing game, just like with gas car sales for the past 120 years of you had a lot of inventory in some parts of the year, lower inventory other parts of the year, and having end of the year sales deals and all these things. I mean, that's been a normal thing. So I mean, I remember seeing regular Silverados offering 20% off, a couple of years back. So, I mean, this is something that's not out of the ordinary. And so I think they're just having to figure out, let's not overproduce. Let's, realize and be realistic about how many millionaires are out there and how many of them want to buy something like that. And then, finally getting a dose of reality for these car companies a little bit. And Wheatman says, when will Genesis begin using Lucid electric motors? I don't think that deal has been confirmed publicly, at least yet. But if that does in fact turn out to happen, I mean, it's going to be a while, because, I mean, honestly, Genesis they already have the fantastic platform that only Porsche and Audi and Lucid, I guess, can really match from a charging standpoint and speed wise and stuff. And so I don't think there's a giant rush there. I think it's really just going to be for the Genesis X, stuff, which they'll probably do as a coupe convertible. And, there's talk that it could be some kind of like Bentley wannabe with the pricing and the luxury and stuff. So I would say that would be the first entrance of that. And I believe the idea was floated that could be like, 2026, potentially maybe model year 26. So maybe we see something like that next year. But it might also be something that kind of gets put on the back burner if Genesis is now pivoting, to hybrids. Then maybe that X stuff is going to end up getting thrown on the back burner as well, and they will deal with that in 5 years or something instead. Because I mean, like Aston Martin, they were rushing their EV, and that's why they were using Lucid motors as well. And then now I think they've pushed that to 2027 because I think they all realize, like, first off, a lot of these super rich people don't really want EVs, and regulatory wise, they got a much looser leash now, so they can kind of get off the hook with worrying about that for a while now. So, I think that's bad news for Lucid, but I think, that's what you're going to see is a lot of these partnerships are going to kind of get delayed, and, because there's not this big hurry like there used to be, I think. And Danny says, "Hey, Matt, sorry I'm late. Computer had to do a last-minute update." All good, Danny. Thanks for joining in. Let me see. Goth Rocker says, "The car companies want you to buy the fully loaded models because they make a much larger profit." Yeah, this is why they're trying to eliminate the lower trims. Absolutely. I mean, it makes perfect sense on their side. And, for, again, a for-profit company that is publicly traded and their goal is to boost the stock price, increase shareholder value, and that's their job, and so I guess you can say you can't blame them for trying to maximize profits, but if you got consumers in a chokehold and you don't give them the option for the lower price stuff, and you're getting rid of all your affordable vehicles, that's where it's like, there's got to be a limit too, because not everyone can be a Ferrari or a Lamborghini and sell 10,000 cars a year and make a giant profit. Like, they are going to get to a point where it's like, again, you're going to reach a limit of how many people are going to spend 50 grand on an Odyssey before everyone's like, okay, I'm just done with Honda Odysseys, and they go find a Carnival or a used Odyssey or something like that. I think also car companies they don't have as much leverage as maybe they used to with this stuff as well, because they are making really reliable cars on the whole. The biggest complaints from Consumer Reports and stuff now for reliability is like CarPlay acting up. That's it. Like, most modern cars aren't going to leave you on the side of the road. They're not going to, overheat. They're not going to, all these, if you've, known the history of cars and, hydro locking and all these things used to happen, cars used to not last more than 100,000 miles, either because the motor was crap or because, the car just fall apart around you with rust and, terrible build quality and stuff. And so you could turn over cars quicker and all that back then, but you can't do that now. So, like, again, I think that buying a 5-year-old Odyssey is a much better choice than a brand new one if they're going to force you to get an EXL and you need something cheap, because, a 5-year-old Odyssey still has another 10 to 15 years left in it anyway. And cars are so reliable. The average car is 12.6 years old on the road, and that's the average. So when you have everyone driving around in 12-year-old cars anyway, that shows you how reliable they are, and that average keeps climbing every year. So, I think this is why I'm honestly surprised we don't see more used car purchasing. I think it's just because the used credit market is just so much worse, and everyone just wants that new car interest rate. And that's what keeping people coming back to the new car dealers, because otherwise, like, again, I literally make my living off of reviewing mostly new cars. This is not helping my business either, but like, seriously, like, I really wonder why a lot of people buy new cars. They're really, really nice, but like, if you have, a budget to stick to, everything's super expensive, and I get it. I also am like, man, 30 grand for a Civic, and I'm also trying to adjust my brain to, again, the inflation of the past few years and how 30 is the new 20 as far as pricing and all that. But it's tough because, again, a lot of us didn't have our wages increase, to go along with the inflation and all that. Some of us did, and looks like the data shows that a lot of people have had nice pay increases, but like, I haven't, and I know probably many of you haven't as well. I'm doing double the work here to try and make the same money I made on YouTube 5 years ago, so it's a lot of us. It's just like, yep, I don't have the money to, keep up with these expensive cars these days. So again, just got to vote with our dollars. And let me see. Cooper Dale says, I think he needs some whiskey. Yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea tonight, now that I'm on my soapbox. But Sean says, bring back cars with crank windows and AM/FM radios. I'm right there with you. We all just need to like crowdfund a car company that just does exactly that and just makes real bare bones stuff. And it's honestly like it'd be a great opportunity for like Mitsubishi or somebody else, like one of these companies, as long as you can get these things to pass like the safety requirements they need for America. Otherwise, bring over whatever foreign market stuff is dirt cheap and sell it here. I think this is why also if VinFast sticks to their plan of the VF3, I think is the little like Suzuki Jimny looking EV. There's talks that could be like 20 grand. And even if it only has 100 miles of range, just to get people to work and back, 20 grand, a new car, loan, interest rate and stuff, 20 grand. I mean, I think that thing would just like dominate. And it's because everyone else is walking away from the 20 grand car. So if anyone leans into that, like a new gen Mirage or something from Mitsubishi, like anything, I think this is why again Versa is doing so well, even though that is several years old already. It's nice enough that people are gobbling them up for 20 grand. It's just same thing. I wish I had the means to start something like that myself. And Bab says, hey, Matt, considering the Mach-E for our next family car, wondering how it compares to the Mercedes that Beth had before, looking at maybe used 21 GLC 300 or 21 GLB 250. Thanks. Absolutely. So as far as Mach-E comparing to a GLC, well, I think like at least for Beth, the big deciding factor, like we had a GLB loaner car for a few days when her car was in for some, I think it was just maybe a day we had it for. And I mean, she took it for a couple of little drives, and just the dual clutch in the GLB she hated. So the dual clutch automatic in those is just not very smooth. And so you're always feeling it engage whenever you're starting from a stop, and sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, and then the shifts aren't always super smooth. And she's super sensitive and annoyed about that because of her old Ford Fiesta she used to have, which had that horrible power shift. I think it was a single, maybe it was a dual clutch, but it's a terrible. I mean, that transmission blew up in 4,000 miles, and she had to get a new one put in. Thankfully, under warranty and that. But they're, so she's, I think, a little more sensitive to dual clutches than others are. But like, even me, again, with my car reviewer hat on here, like it's not super smooth, and honestly a little unbecoming for a luxury branded vehicle, but they sell a ton of them. So clearly it's not bad enough to discourage a lot of people. So maybe for you, it wouldn't be bad. Definitely test drive one, form your own opinion on it. But that was the only downside of GLB. Otherwise, GLB is packaged really well. The materials are cheap and not, particularly high quality for Mercedes as well. But again, you're buying one of the lowest models. That's kind of, I guess to be expected a little bit, especially these days. But GLB is great from a sizing standpoint. Otherwise, it's a lot of car luxury wise for the money. And GLC, though, certainly is so much more polished. It's the regular 9-speed torque converter. Space is actually pretty comparable. I think it's slightly better than GLC, but the main thing is you just have more power in GLC. It's smoother. It's the next class up. So it's going to give you extra refinement, extra quietness, nicer interior. So between GLC and GLB, I'd go GLC if pricing is fairly close on those. Definitely get them with an extended warranty, though, if you do, because, again, I give Mercedes about 5 years on their new vehicles before I'd be a little sketched out by them. So if you're talking about a vehicle that's already 3 years old at this point, potentially 4, depending on when it was built, if it's 2020, and with a 2020 model year, or an actual 2021 vehicle. But regardless, I just get an extended warranty on those for sure. As far as how Mach-E compares, I mean, the reason why Beth loves a Mach-E is the fact that it's just instant power. That's her number one thing that she really loves about, and why she wants to stick to an EV, is the fact that she puts her foot down and it goes immediately. There's no waiting for a clutch to kick in. There's no waiting for a transmission to figure out if you need to be in second gear or first, which I have a Hyundai Santa Fe this week. And on the first drive, it wasn't that bad, but man, like, this week, it's just been like not giving me the gear I want as fast as I want it. And it's been real annoying, honestly. And reminds me how much, like, if a transmission is not done well, they are the most biggest annoyances. So that's it. It's just, you hit the gas, it goes immediately, it's smooth, it's instant, it's powerful, it's fast. I mean, it has some downsides. I don't love how the brakes in the rear don't clean off the debris that gathers on them, because you don't use the rear brakes very often in an EV because that's regenning most of the time. So the rear brakes have all kinds of grooves in them. They've already had replaced once, and even that we got the new pads and rotors put on the back, and it's still added grooves in a couple of days later right away again. So just a bad design flaw by Ford that they refuse to fix. But that's honestly like legitimately the only complaint, knock on wood, with the Mach-E is the rear brakes, which I just kind of put it out of my mind. I'm like, whatever, like it still is functioning safely. It's still fine. I'm not going to, continue to chase that rabbit. So I'm just going to let it go. But yeah, that's the only thing. Otherwise, Mach-E has been fantastic. It's been 2 years now. I should probably do a 2-year update video on it relatively soon. I'm just so jam-packed with reviews. It's like my backlog has never been longer. I have stuff that I got stuff that's like 3 months ago that I filmed that's going to be posted up. I already know basically my whole schedule into November now, just because of the amount of press cars I have scheduled and just how long my backlog is. It's crazy. But I want to do an update on the Mach-E, but I mean, honestly, there's not a whole lot to say aside from just the brakes still doing that dumb thing in the back. But otherwise, it's been a great car for us. Hopefully that answers your question. If you have any follow-up questions, though, definitely let me know. And thanks again for being a member, Babs. And Evinder says Lexus LC convertible. Yes, I would love one of those. That would certainly fit the bill for a 4-seater convertible, and one that would last a long time. And definitely be a buy and hold for me if I could afford it. But I cannot afford an LC convertible, unfortunately. Maybe someday we can dream. But yes, I would absolutely would rock one of those in a heartbeat if I could afford it. Danny says, hey, Matt, what are your thoughts on a 99 Subaru Legacy SUS Limited? Also, rest in peace, Legacy, 1989 to 2025. I hate that Subaru's killing it. Yeah, it's sad. I mean, yeah, I love my Legacy as well. As far as that generation, the 99 there, those were always cool. And the SUS was a very forward-thinking idea, lifted sedan. Again, Subaru, I think, maybe had a little bit of a crystal ball there that they just were executing their idea about 20 years too soon. But yeah, I mean, I think they're really cool. That generation Legacy was pretty solid. And just all those 90s Subarus were so good, in my opinion. So yeah, I think they're great. Let me see. Kyle, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate the generosity and happy to see everyone was able to grab those. But Kyle, I really do appreciate every single week Kyle gifts memberships, and it's so generous of him. And so thank you, Kyle, so much for that. It really always blows me away. Let me see. So Kyle's talking to Sean here. Golf Rocker says, I was in my large comfy Continental and a Cybertruck was next to me. They really are huge. When people get hit by those, they're going to be hurt. I feel small in my Continental, let alone my Subi. Yeah. Anything like that is concerning. I also have a Hummer EV this week, the SUV version. And it's another vehicle like that one. I'm so aware, like hyper aware of like the fact that I'm driving around basically a not quite 9,000 pound vehicle, because this one has a smaller battery than the Hummer EV truck does. It's terrifying. It's a huge, big hulking thing. I mean, it's fairly easy to drive, although it can be a little sketchy under acceleration. But yeah, these giant heavy things, it's like anyone gets in their way, and yeah, you're gonna have to hope that you have luck on your side, because it's not a good physics equation for anyone aside from the people driving these giant things. And that's why, like, honestly, even though as I was gonna say Chris Farley, even though Jim Farley was making some strange comments here in the past few weeks, him saying like America needs to stop being in love with these monster trucks. I mean, I agree. It's not good really in any way. It's bad for pedestrians. It's bad for emissions. It's bad for everything. And even with the EV versions, this Hummer EV, I'm getting 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which, I mean, like for reference, our Mach-E gets like mid threes, I think, or like low, like it's like 3.2, 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. So like, not even basically half the efficiency of the Mach-E, and this giant thing that takes so many resources to build this giant battery and stuff. It just, so even on the EV side, it's kind of indefensible in my mind, and it's just like, yeah. And so he's really hoping that small cars become popular again. I hope so too, for pedestrians' sake, for everyone else on the road's sake. Just so many things that again, it only benefits the person that's driving it. Everyone else is worse off with these large vehicles on the road. But let me see. Dylan says, I sold Kia for a couple of years and sold only one Carnival. Most people want a three-row SUV, even though a minivan usually suits the needs better. Yep. It's just that, yeah, so many people still have that stigma. It's unfortunate. Cam Jam says, took a 3-hour round trip on the jet ski yesterday. OG owner since 2006, Yamaha non-supercharged reliability, I guess. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I've only been on a jet ski once. I rented one for like an hour, and it was so much fun. And even though like my risk tolerance doesn't like, I can't do a motorcycle. I know so many people ask that all the time, like if I'm ever gonna get into motorcycles and stuff. I have zero interest, just from a safety concern standpoint. But jet ski, it's like, to me, like most of the fun of a motorcycle, in my opinion, but in a safer environment. Kind of like, I mean, I'd be into a dirt bike too if I had free time and free money, but like jet ski, I think would be even more up my alley than a dirt bike. Jet skis are awesome. It's cool you have one, and yeah, I just need to get back on a jet ski someday. That would be a ton of fun. I'm glad you're having a good weekend. And Goth Rocker says, my friend's father, who has a business, got $7,000 off a new Kia Carnival. Kia wants to move them. He just wanted a base van for business, but the Carnival was cheaper than the others and better warranty. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, $7,000 off. That sounds about right with Kias a lot of times. So that's great. And glad they got a deal. Glad someone's getting a deal these days. It seems like no one is. Good Stick says, I've been seeing a lot of 25 Toyota Camrys, especially the LE models, almost every day. Nice. That's cool. They're churning out LEs. I have not seen an LE. I think I've seen mostly higher trims. But that's great. I hope that Toyota puts out a good amount of those, because it's a lot of car. I mean, I talked about that in my Camry review. The LE is, I mean, again, if you got the money to burn, go for it. But like otherwise, LE is probably the play, to be completely honest. It's so much standard equipment these days. And that's another thing I keep saying in my reviews is like, you don't need to go for these higher trims anymore, because everything again comes so well equipped. You get adaptive cruise in a Corolla now. It's insane. That used to be, even Mercedes and BMW still charge you extra for that. You get it standard in a Corolla. There's so many nice features in base models these days that really makes you question, if you were used to, buying an XLE, or you're used to buying an EX Honda, like check out the LX, because it's probably going to be totally livable and you save yourself some money, And Ace, thanks for joining in. And Good Stick says, hopefully Ford is successful making affordable EVs that are small. Absolutely. And I think, Chevy's on the right track too, with Equinox EV being pretty cheap and still being smaller, but giving you a ton of space. But I think also even Chevy's doing a great job with the Trax. The Trax is so much car for $23,500. I think that's actually maybe what I was referring to earlier about the company that's really impressed me with the amount of base models they've churned out. Yeah, the Trax, and I see Trax everywhere, and I'm like, thank you. Like, people are like rewarding a car company for finally putting out a good economy car, and people are buying them like crazy. They're also buying them in fun colors. I see every color of the rainbow for the Trax out there. People bought them. They're driving them a bunch, and they're selling a ton of them. It's been a really good success for Chevy, and I hope that again this drives home the point. Like, hey, look, like you put out a good car for $23,500. Like the people will come and they will buy a ton of them, And so it's funny. Another funny spotting. Speaking of the Trax, I was behind someone a few days ago who was in a brand new Trax. I'm like, oh, nice, another Trax, great to see. But then on the back, under Trax, someone found a badge that's, excuse my French, but it said shitbox edition. And I like laughed out loud. I've never seen that on a car before. And I don't think the Trax is a shitbox. They bought a brand new one. And I was like just so surprised that they would call their brand new Trax that, because it's not. it's not, in my opinion. It's a really nice car for the money, but it was the first time I've ever seen that badge on anything. So I don't know who makes those or where they found that badge, but that is a funny addition to personalize your car. And maybe they're just preparing to own it a long time, and so that's why they've just decided to put the badge on now, so it looks good and worn in 10 or 15 years when maybe the car looks a little more worn out. And Double Strike says, hey there, Matt. Not sure if you are an Olympics fan, but I know you are an Ioniq 5N fan. That review is everything I was hoping it'd be. My hat. My hat's off to Hyundai and Kia. Yeah, that thing was fantastic. Gymnastics or Olympics, we watched gymnastics because Beth's really into that. So we were watching some of that today, actually. And it's great to see, another actual normal Olympics here this year is great. So, and also we were in Paris back in 2019. So it's really cool to just kind of see all the sights and stuff from when we were there. But, yeah, and the Ioniq 5N, I feel like that's calling your name, Double Strike. I know you have the Taycan. I saw your comment on the review video as well. But if you want something that's going to be a super fun EV, that takes the crown easily right now for sure. Until maybe we'll see if Dodge Charger gives it a run for its money, because Dodge also wants to do similar kind of stuff like the N. So hopefully Dodge can also evoke a similar kind of emotional response with their Charger EV. We'll see. But Luke says, I really want a new mid-sized truck, but I can't decide which one. I wake up every day thinking about a different one. Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good options now that they've all kind of come out with new versions. So it's a tough choice, I'm sure. I don't envy you because I'm a very indecisive person a lot of times as well, so that'd be tough. I mean, the only thing I will say that you've probably heard me say many times before, but I think the Ridgeline is very underrated. I don't know if you need a full-blown truck for higher towing purposes or anything, but if you are open to something that isn't on a body-on-frame platform, Ridgeline's great. My buddy has one and absolutely loves it, and I've always been impressed with those as well. Sean says, hey, Matt, a long-term review of the Fisker Ocean would be great for the channel. That would be great for content, I'm sure, until it locked me inside on a sunny day and I had to smash the windows to get out or something. Yeah, that would be a good one. Honestly, though, if I'm going to buy an unreliable vehicle and chronicle my tribulations in it, I feel like it's going to be something far more entertaining, like an old Jag or something, more so than an appliance on wheels. I mean, Fisker, it had a little bit of promise, but I always just thought that was going to be a bad idea. And sure enough, it turned out to be, unfortunately. And Jay says, hey, Matt, hope you and your family are in great health. Everything is going good. Nice to see you again. Nice to see you again as well, Jay. Hope you're doing well. And thanks so much for tuning in. And Yavinder says, this is something more about politics and law, but can a Cadillac Escalade have a 55-inch screen, how can it have a 55-inch screen, but using my phone is disturbing? Yeah, I can see the point there. I mean, I think the screen in some of these massive vehicles, it's not like all 55 inches is a touch. A lot of it is just static and not really doing anything. Like, for example, in the Lincoln Nautilus that I will post a review of here next month, I've been talking about that vehicle, and I feel like in the live streams here for like months already, and it's been a while since I've even, filmed it, but again, just part of my backlog. But anyway, that thing has that giant screen already across the entire dashboard pretty much. But, like one giant quadrant shows you the weather, like you're not going to be looking at that. I mean, there's a lot of wasted space. Right now it's like the bragging right of, 55 inches. But, it's not like it's 55 inches of text like this, chat box or something like that. It's, there's a lot of wasted space there. So I think, it's that combined with the fact that screen is up high and, near the windshield. So there's less of a reaction time, because that's kind of the science with smartphone usage. And the problem of that is the fact that most people aren't driving around like this. And I mean, I guess if you are, you'll look funny, but technically from the science standpoint, you're going to have a quicker adjustment period for your eyes. But the problem is everyone looks down at their phone. And this is why you're seeing all these tablets in these cars for the infotainment system be up, smacked at the top of the dashboard there, because, again, anything lower down, whether it's an infotainment system, a phone, or whatever, it's just this movement is longer than this movement is, or whatever. So like that whole issue is part of the problem, I think, with smartphones. But this is why I think, with a phone mount, if you have it on the phone mount and you keep it there, like I feel like it's, going to be just as safe as, doing stuff in the car. I think the thing with the car stuff is the icons are larger, so it's easier to hit, so you need less focus. And, it's not as dynamic of a display. There's not as much that you can do. They kind of limit you in most vehicles. So you can't do everything you can do on a phone, obviously, with CarPlay and stuff. So I think the extra limitations, the larger imaging, the larger, targets to hit with your finger and stuff, I think are part of why it's still, to me, better than a phone. And again, it's a lot of wasted space. Only the middle part of that Escalade is going to be a touchscreen, I think. Maybe the other side for passenger usage, but obviously you're not going to be reaching over as the driver. So it's really largely the same amount of real estate that you're working with compared to like a current Escalade. It's just the ooh and ah factor of, hey, look, I now have a cool dynamic background for the rest of it or something, and it's not really very useful. Even like I had a Genesis GV80, which now has a single panel, and it's not that big. I think it's like maybe 30 inches across or something. But like even that, like they've simplified it so much that you have like the speed and the tack and all that like in one little pod, and then there's just like a mountain silhouette just that changes depending on the time of day, and a very low speed kind of static thing that changes slowly. And it's just there just to be like, wow, look at your giant screen. And it doesn't ever really add more functionality. So, I think that's kind of why, I see this large screen trend, and it's fine. It's whatever. It seems like people seem to want that, or they're impressed by it, at least temporarily. I think that is a phase that also may backfire eventually and just be a fad more so than a long-standing trend. But I feel like for those various reasons, it's still a little safer, but I can certainly appreciate the point. And again, if you have your phone on a phone mount, I feel like it's, not a whole lot different. And Mike says, Matt, any extra thoughts on Stellantis nightmares? Is it simply that consumers recognize prices are too high for a brand with so many quality control issues? I think there's a lot of that. I think that word is starting to get around that, Jeep's been having some issues with stuff, and these days, especially with the internet, you can't get away with that stuff as easily as you could have back in the day. So I feel like there's obviously, I mean, that it's not like the internet's a new phenomenon, but this is something people are more vocal now than ever, and any slight disturbance in anyone's day, they got to go and talk about it online. So like I think there's just a lot more of a vocal group there that is calling out that kind of stuff. But I also think it's just, I think the perceived quality for, Stellantis vehicles, not only just like reliability stuff, but also just like what you get for your money. And I think like the Grand Cherokee is that prime example. And I called this out many years ago when this new Grand Cherokee came out. It's just too expensive for the average buyer. Now, I've been seeing a decent amount popping up, especially 4xEs. I think they're probably leasing pretty well right now. But if you look at, again, just judging it by MSRP and what Jeep asks for or hopes to get, it's just way too expensive. And especially I think the problem, especially with Stellantis, is their option packages get way too out of hand. And that's the thing that really ratchets up the price. I mean, I was complaining about this with the Dodge Hornet as well. A base Hornet is great, 30 grand or whatever. I think now it's like 32, 33 or whatever. Again, sticker for, what do those have? What, like 260 or 270 horsepower or 295 pound-feet of torque? Like, it's the most power in its class. Like, it is. And at 30 grand, that makes it a great deal. But then whenever it's 50 grand, the most power in its class doesn't matter because you're going a class or two up at that point. And 50 grand for a Hornet, I mean, you can get a Durango for 50 grand. So like, there's, again, I think they need to do a better job with their packaging for a lot of their options. And these option packages just need to be cheaper, or just bundle this stuff in, as standard equipment instead. Because you look at other companies that bundle stuff in and do a really good job with standard equipment. I think that's where Jeep could improve some stuff. Throw in adaptive cruise as standard, throw in, heated seats as standard, stuff like that a lot of companies do these days. So I think, but especially like Grand Cherokee, like, yes, it's more off-road capable than most others. And yeah, in America, maybe a few people, depending on where you live, are more appreciative of that. But at least in the suburbs and stuff here, like, no one's taking their Grand Cherokee off-road. And so why would you pay the Jeep tax, the Jeep price premium for something that you're never going to use when you can go, instead of spending 50 grand on a Grand Cherokee, you can get a loaded Hyundai Palisade or something that's bigger, more, luxurious with massaging seats and all these things, heated third row, like all these extravagant things for the same money. It's just the value is just not there. And, some companies have this kind of thing where they don't know how to get out of the echo chamber, and they're just high-fiving everyone in the boardroom, and they're not looking at the competition. And one of the craziest kind of stories that I heard through the grapevine was that whenever this current gen Silverado came out, before they did the interior refresh, which now has the nice big screen, though they launched that generation with a tiny little like 7-inch or 8-inch screen when Ram had this giant thing already. And I was told that someone asked the Chevy engineer, like, why do you guys think you can get away with this tiny little screen when the Ram has this giant tablet? And they're like, oh, we haven't really like checked out the Ram. Like, is it really like that impressive? And like, surely the people working on that truck had to have at least seen pictures and been like, they're doing this, maybe we should look into that. But like, supposedly they like had no, like that didn't like register, like, oh no, we're down on screen real estate. Like they didn't do that comparison. It's almost too hard to believe. So I don't entirely believe that story, but I've been told it by, other journalists. And so I just, there's those types of things where companies truly are just not aware of what other companies are doing. So for some reason, I don't know how they miss this stuff, because they have people that are, I'm sure, paid very well to like do these kind of comparisons, but stuff seems to fall through the cracks, and you have stuff like Jeep trying to get away with charging 5 or 10 grand more for a Grand Cherokee than a comparable competitor, and it's not going to fly. And so I'm hoping with Tavares talking about cleaning up pricing and just cleaning up these brands, I hope that they can just bring some common sense back to the lineup and see what works for other companies and read the room. It's because, again, there's companies that do a really good job in all these various segments and do make high value cars. And I look at anything Stellantis, and again, unless you go for a base model, and even then, like I think a base Wrangler is almost a ripoff as well. But if you go for like a base Hornet or some of these others, it's there. But otherwise, I feel bad for these Jeep and Dodge and Chrysler dealers, because they got to discount stuff like crazy and probably just get raked over the coals themselves, and trying to eke out some profit for them on these things when no one sees the value and it's just priced too high. I gave GM crap for this for years before they finally started pricing stuff better, for the tracks and things like that. Buick and Vista's priced for really well, and GM, there was another company where they relied on discounts all the time, and that was the thing, is like it was hard to review them at MSRP, because I'm like, this prior gen Chevy Trax is $30,000, and then we're talking 2018 or 2019. It's like, who in their right mind back then is paying 30 grand for a subcompact? These days that's a little more normal, but even now that's kind of a reach, and so they just, but there's like, oh yeah, but Chevy will give you 5 grand off, and it's like, cool, but like that's not a consistent thing, so you can't always rely on that. It's going to come down to when you're buying and all the variables. But it's just like, I don't know why some companies struggle with just like nailing the pricing. A lot of companies do a really good job with nailing pricing. I think GR Corolla is a prime example of that. There's a lot of stuff that's really well priced, but there's others where it's just like, what were you guys thinking? Like, I don't know. It's just, it's mind blowing to me. And Ace says, used to love the Mitsubishi Diamante. Yeah, those did not hold up well, but they were pretty cool back in the day. If you wanted something at a more affordable price that still had some swagger to it. And Good Six says Toyota Corolla is also very reasonable. I agree. I think part of the benefit of that is the fact that it's, again, an older Corolla. This generation now is kind of towards the end of its life. It's not a new gen thing like Civic and others. And so I think that's why Corolla has a little bit of a price advantage right now. But I think also, that's another area, speaking of Toyota and talking about more reasonably priced models, Camry was another example. They lowered the price on Camry Hybrid. Obviously now they're all hybrid, so theoretically we do have a price increase. But, for those going for the hybrid, it's cheaper than the last generation hybrid, which is unheard of these days. And I got to commend Toyota for that. That is like, again, just very respectable, because they didn't have to. It's a new model. They can still market and spin it as like, oh, well, you're getting a new car, so you pay more. That's totally in line with the norm. but they decided to buck the norm instead and say it's going to be cheaper. And I think that further incentivizes people. And this is why, like everyone's saying, we're seeing Camrys everywhere. Imagine that, pricing a car at a good price and making it a good car. People come out of the woodwork to buy them. It's crazy concept. Jay says, I've been contemplating getting a 2021 CT4V. Just hate the idea of driving my R around in the winter, seeing if the all-wheel drive CT4V can be a daily driver. Any thoughts since your review was a while ago? Yeah, so I think CT4V is a very underrated vehicle, and it's, I think, easily looked over. My problem with CT4V is, at least the ones that I've seen, they aren't cheap enough to be compelling as a used value to me, because it's another one that I kind of have potentially every once in a while on my like dad car list. If I needed stuff at a certain price point, I have like a running list of like everything I would buy at, various price points and what my favorites are and stuff. And CT4V has the merits from a driving standpoint to like make that list. But then every time I'm like, oh, I wonder if like CT4Vs will finally come down in price, and then they just never really do. And if you look at, like, I would rather have a CT5V or even like a CT5 6-cylinder, not even the full-blown V, but just a 6-cylinder, which is not, it's pretty similar in power to the regular V of the CT5. You still get that 6-cylinder, you get more space, a nicer vehicle with a CT5, the 6-cylinder instead of the 4. And those aren't that much more expensive. It's really close. So like in my personal window shopping, like every time I've been like, oh yeah, CT4V, then I'm like, wait a minute, CT5Es or CT5s are cheaper anyway, or relatively close in price, maybe a couple grand premium, but that's it. So I would just go CT5 if you are interested in a Cadillac sports sedan, honestly. But if you happen to find a better deal on a CT4V than I've seen, and you can get it for a significant discount over a CT5, then by all means, CT4V is great. Ton of power, so agile and so small. And especially if you're coming out of a Type R, I think you're going to especially appreciate it because it's probably actually going to feel smaller than your Type R. And so you might love that. And it's so agile. It just dives into corners. It's so lightweight, feeling that awesome alpha platform. They're phenomenal. So yeah, that would be one that I would probably, say if you can get a good deal, I would actually recommend that for sure. Let me see. Jordan, thank you so much for a super chat. I must have missed that. Apologies for making you wait a little bit. But Jordan says, Ford Fusion patent for future Fusion car energy. That would be cool. I don't know unless you're actually referring to something real, but that would be great. I hope that Fusion Energy someday gets more viable. I read an article, I think a year or two ago, that like it seems like they're actually making progress, like real progress. I think there was a breakthrough last year, if I remember correctly, on Fusion Energy, where like I think they finally actually figured out a way to like make it work. It's just scaling it up or something. I think again, very foggy memory of that. But anyway, yeah, I hope that Fusion kind of solves all of our problems someday. With kind of a wave of the wand, and then we can, rest a little bit easier, and can give people more freedom to do whatever and not have to worry quite as much. We'll see, but yeah, it'd be cool to see Fusion actually happen, or the Ford Fusion. I'd be happy to see either. More happy for actual Fusion than the Ford Fusion, but I'd love to see the Ford Fusion come back as well. If Ford is actually wanting to get back into smaller cars or just cars in general, I think Fusion would be great. They have that fantastic one over in China. They could, build it. Or actually, they could even just ship the Chinese-built version over here, because they do that with the Nautilus, and they're fine with that as long as it's not an EV, from the tariff standpoint. So they should totally just bring the new Fusion over here. That would be great. And thank you, Jordan, for the super chat. Also, thank you for another super chat. He says, car companies on live chat anonymously. Yeah, it'd be fun. I'm always curious, like who is actually watching these, but I highly doubt that anyone of any importance is watching these from like a manufacturer standpoint, anything like that. Obviously, you're all very important to me, and always happy to chat. But I just made the people making the decisions. I don't think any of them care about my opinions too much, honestly. So it's probably better that way, because again, it allows me to be free to say whatever I want, and yeah, don't have to hurt anyone's feelings. Let me see. Find where I was here. Oh, another super chat. Noel, thank you so much for the super chat. They're asking a GR Corolla or Golf R, CT4V Blackwing or M3, S4 or M340i, and C8 Z06 or 911 GT3. First question, again, all of these, I'm just going to give you my opinion, which might not jive with what you're looking for, what you want, but just to keep this fairly brief, because otherwise I could talk for 20 minutes about these comparisons. But GR Corolla over Golf R for sure for me. Just more fun in basically every way. CT5e Blackwing, I would definitely take that over M3. I have not driven the new M3, to be fair, but Blackwing has, so CT4, I think, I don't love the BMW shifter or the manual setup in BMWs myself. The Cadillac to me is better. The Cadillac also feels, I think, a little simpler, a little lighter, most likely. And so for all those reasons, I'd probably go CT4V Blackwing over M3. But again, I'd have to drive M3 to say for sure on that one. But based on what I know, if I were to have to make a snap judgment call on that, I'd go for the Blackwing. As far as S4 versus M340i, I personally, I mean, again, I have to drive an M340i with the adaptive dampers, but without them, I just did my M340i review recently and the S4 that were both, lightly used. Excuse me. Actually, I think the S4 had 100,000 miles. That one wasn't lightly used, but still was running great. Anyway, between those two, I like the S4's more comfortable ride. I like the Audi infotainment system better than the BMW one personally as well. So for me, it would be S4 over M340i. I'm a fan of using turn signals. Just kidding. But so S4 for me for that comparison. As far as Z06 versus 911 GT3, I've not driven the new 911 GT3 either. That one is tough because Z06 was probably, I can pretty safely say, probably the most fun. Not even, maybe most fun is not the right word, but probably the best car objectively that I've ever driven and reviewed at least. And 911 GT3 probably be pretty far up there as well if I ever had my chance to do the new one. So, but as much as I love the 911 GT3 sound, I think the Z06 probably sounds a little more otherworldly. That I think it's tough, and I'd probably go Z06 potentially. Although I think I actually like the styling of the 911s a little bit better, just for my personality. They're a little more low key, especially if you can go GT3 touring and ditch the wing. That would probably suit my personality better, but honestly, Z06, it's just too much fun to worry about image that I would just probably still take the Z06. It's just so much fun. It's also a lot cheaper than a GT3. So for that reason alone, if you're actually spending real money on these things, I think the Z06 makes more sense, from a money standpoint. Thank you so much again, Noel, for the super chat as well. And Stratus Edge, thank you so much for being a member for 3 months now. I really appreciate it. They say, hey, Matt, so it's been a week since I've had my Expel ceramic tint installed, and it's the best thing I've done, especially in this Texas heat. I bet. I'm glad you're happy with it. Yeah, that ceramic tint is great. And I mean, yeah, it was great on Beth's Mercedes. We had it installed on. And I also had, I don't think I had the ceramic one on the Bullet. I just had regular Expel tint on that, but that also worked great too. And yeah, the heat rejection is so good with the Expels, and it's really well done. So glad you're enjoying it, and try and stay cool out there in Texas. I'm sure even here today it was 91 and it was not enjoyable, but I can only imagine the heat in Texas is probably even worse. So I hope you're holding up okay. And thanks for being a member for 3 months as well, Stratus. Let me see. Find where I was here. And Jay also says I'll be test driving an all-wheel drive CT4V tomorrow to see also. Great. Well, I'll be curious to hear what you think about it whenever if you can tune in next week or whatever. We can chat some more, but I hope you enjoy the test drive. And yeah, curious to hear. Hopefully the video is a good prepper for you as far as what to expect, and hopefully it lines up. But and my mouse has just died, so hopefully I'll be able to do some scrolling here. We'll see if I can get this to work again. But in the meantime, I'm in an okay spot. I can answer these questions and see if my mouse cooperates here after I need to scroll. But let me see. Dave says, what's the difference between NVH and driving feedback? I like to replace soft rubber bushings and mounts with stiffer ones. So yeah, it's really a personal preference thing, I think. And, this is why NVH is something that is really focused on, especially for luxury vehicles, where you typically have less people that care about driving feedback. So there's that. That's, I think, it's just a choice. You can just do either one, from a manufacturer standpoint, and, it's whatever your goals are there. But, I think for me, you can have pretty good feedback and still have pretty good NVH. Just because a car is quiet doesn't mean the steering has to be dead. Doesn't mean that, everything has to be totally numb inside. You can, I think Mazda does a pretty good job of this, where you have a really quiet cabin, but you still have a pretty communicative chassis and you still know what's going on with everything. And so, I think you can kind of blend those both really well. If you have the talent and you have the creative liberties to pursue that, and you have the budget and stuff to, focus on both, I think you can kind of have both to a certain degree. And Jazz says, did you see a picture of the Mercedes in the bribery case against Senator Menendez? It looks like the 2019 convertible C-Class. Should I bid on it, and should I look in the door panels for gold bars? Yeah, it's up to you if you want a convertible C-Class, I suppose. Maybe it's a fire sale and you get a good deal on it. I don't know. But I didn't know what. Yeah, I saw that he got a free Mercedes or whatever in his bribery stuff, but I didn't see there was a C-Class convertible. I thought it'd be something like an S-Class or something if you're getting bribe. Any free Mercedes is obviously nice, but not quite as strong of a bribe if it's a convertible C-Class compared to something a little bit nicer there. But go for it, Jazz. You should totally get it and then start a YouTube channel, and you can have that whole channel just blow up in popularity driving that car, and you can live stream your search for gold bars. All right, yeah, my mouse is still, maybe the battery just died on it. Let me brief pause here to plug in my mouse, because I am an Apple Magic Mouse user, which I know some people will probably be laughing at that. This is a prime example of why this is not the best design, but I gotta plug it in and give it a few minutes juice here, and then it should hopefully work. Let me plug this in. But in the meantime, let me see if I can get it. Did scroll a little bit more, so I don't know what's going on here. Let me see. No, that's not gonna work either. But all right, let me see. This can work. No, it's not gonna work. Let's see if we can get a little more juice here to scroll. And let me actually see. Okay, yes, my mouse is working again. So yep, it's 4% battery now. So that's why. I was always wondering if there'd ever be a day where my mouse would die while I'm in the middle of a live stream, and today is that day. So let me load up some comments here, and then I will plug this back in, then we should be good to go. So Mike says, speaking of Farley's comments, Matt, wouldn't you say he's contradicting himself, because look at the tracks, it's selling well for GM. Ford has chosen to not compete in compact / subcompact SUV segments. Yeah, they have Escape, which is compact. And I have to say, Escape is actually, it's not the most exciting. It's not the most compelling in its segment, but it's a good crossover. I don't think it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. The hybrid is actually, fairly well done. Not the best, but it's fairly well done. And if you get a good deal on that, or the plug-in hybrid, or the regular one, I think a heavily discounted Escape is a good buy. But as far as, yes, you're right. They don't do the sedans. They don't do subcompacts anymore. And the one they did, the EcoSport was a real bad phoned-in job. EcoSport is embarrassing that they brought that over, honestly. But yeah, it's, I don't know. And I'm sure Farley hasn't come to this conclusion overnight. So he's been in charge since 2020, I think. He's had time to bring stuff to market, and again, bring stuff again from other markets if he wants to, or build other things. Again, they're working really hard supposedly on this $25,000 EV, but that's great for people that can, charge at home or at work or whatever. But again, what about a 25 grand hybrid that's compelling for people who don't want a Maverick? I mean, I guess you could say the Maverick is kind of Ford's saving grace from that standpoint because, you know, you put a cab on the back of the Maverick and you have a really practical SUV, essentially, if you want to, call it that, crossover or whatever. I think Maverick is really, yeah, just the answer. And I mean, in this truck loving country we're in, I don't blame them. I think, and this is why Maverick is still a super hot seller. So I think that that's kind of what but even if you say, yeah, Maverick with a cab on the back, but like, why did they leave that money on the table? Make a Maverick SUV or something and put the cab on the back yourself and throw some carpeting on the floor instead of a truck bed lining, and then just churn them out like crazy as well, because not everyone wants to have an open bed or deal with a cab on the back or whatever. But I think that's, if you were to ask Farley, like, oh, what the heck, why don't you have a subcompact SUV? He'd say, get a Maverick. And I kind of agree with him. And the Maverick is fantastic. I haven't driven the hybrid version, but the regular one is great. And again, that is another vehicle. If you take it easy on options, it's priced really well. I think the fully loaded ones get a little silly with pricing still, but if you go for those cheap ones, which again are completely fine base models, just go for the base model. It's never going to be a luxurious vehicle. It's never going to be super, nice. It's a small-ish, kind of somewhat cramped little thing. Excuse me, but it's good efficiency and it's good transportation for, again, same price as the tracks, in those base ones, and it gets phenomenal fuel economy as well. So I think that's the answer, is just put a cab on the back of a Maverick and do that. But Danny says, hey, Matt, sorry for being on a Subaru topic, but in other markets, Subaru in 2002 offered the legacy STI S401 and made it 293 horsepower and 253 pound-feet of torque from a twin-turbo EJ20 packed under the hood. Yeah, and I forgot about the legacy S models there, the S 401. I didn't even know they did a 401. I thought it was always like lower numbers, but maybe I'm just thinking of the Deborah X's. Clearly, you know it better than I do, because I couldn't have rattled off those specs. But yeah, some cool stuff back then. I mean, again, those were just, I think, the golden age of Japanese cars in many ways. Again, we have a lot of great stuff these days. GR Corolla, one of my favorite cars, is a prime example of that. But there's so many cool things just everywhere. Again, not just one thing or two things, but like having an STI version of everything, basically, and doing all these sporty things and just letting them run wild with it. It's a shame. Mike says the Escape is half-assed at best, and the Bronco Sport is overpriced for what it is. I mean, yeah, I don't agree. I think Escape is pretty decent in my opinion. Again, I think I've driven a good amount of most of the competitors. It's, I think that's one of the vehicles where I gotta, take myself out of an enthusiast mindset and just be in a mindset of someone who wants something that is higher off the ground, so you don't have to bend over to get into it. That's comfortable and smooth and quiet. And the Escape is that, in my mind. I think it's actually well done, maybe to a fault. I think it's too well done, potentially, just as far as like being brutally honest about what crossover buyers actually need, kind of like a Ridgeline kind of predicament, where it's like, this is all you really need, but is that desirable? No. And I mean, I feel like I see more Bronco Sports than Escapes these days, which is hilarious because the Bronco Sport is more cramped, it's more expensive, and it's the same powertrains and it's the same platform. So it's just a more exciting looking Escape that's more expensive and more cramped. And but they sell better, which just shows you how car purchases are emotional, nonsensical decisions a lot of times. And that's okay, but it's just, the reality. And so that's why I think Escape struggles. But yeah, Bronco Sport is definitely overpriced. And I mean, this was, again, even before inflation times. I was like, this is expensive. You can go back and watch my Bronco Sport video. I complained about it, what was that, 4 or 5 years ago now? It was problematic for sure, but didn't stop people, or they're getting huge discounts, one or the other. Car says, I see that the 2025 Carnival is going for $36,500 before negotiations. Okay. Well, better than, what is it, 43 now for a base Odyssey? So a nice discount there for the Carnival. And so hopefully Carnival sales surpass Odyssey if we want to send a message to Honda that you can't, charge 43 grand for a base Odyssey. And we will see if that actually happens and benefits Kia or not. And Dave says, remember, jet skis can still be dangerous. They don't have brakes. Someone I know is killed following another. Man, That sucks to hear. Yeah, I mean, I know for sure jet skis, yeah, have their risks too, and yeah, the braking thing is problematic. I'm sure. I mean, yeah, and it was a long time since I was on one, and I'm far from being a pro or anything. So I literally have only ridden one once. But to me, it was never like sketchy, at least back then. Maybe these days it would be. I think it's just, being in a place where you don't have a ton of crowds, probably would be helpful with that, I'm sure, as well. And just, again, being smart about it, like anything else. But I think just for me, the problem with motorcycles is people around me. And with jet skis and dirt bikes or anything like that, you usually don't have people around you. And so to me, that's why at that point, it's just like it's all on you. If you're going to be, screwing up or whatever, then at least you only have yourself to blame. And it's not just someone texting while driving and, running you off the road or whatever. But yeah, I still would like to give a jet ski a try someday, I think. And let me see. I'm going to unplug my mouse here. I see we have another super chat that came in. So let me see. Hugo, thank you so much for a super chat. Good to see you, Hugo. Hope you're doing well. He says, hey, Matt, how can I subscribe to your channel again? I changed debit cards. Gotcha. For the member stuff. I'm not sure. I mean, if you go if the join button isn't available, or the link in the description here in the live stream, if that doesn't work to bring you to the page to sign up, then maybe you just have to change the debit card in your own YouTube account. And I think that might be the way to do it. Because I mean, clearly it's letting you do super chats here. So I'm assuming your form of payment should be working. So I would just try and find the join button or the link in the description, and hopefully that solves it for you there. But thank you so much for the support, Hugo, and hope you're doing well. And let me see. Now that I have a usable mouse, getting back to my other member questions here. So two-track Jack says he's seen those badges on eBay of the ones on the tracks there, the shitbox badges. Cam Jim says, found a 2017 Cadillac ATS 3.6. Seems like a very well-rounded car. Dynamic handling, nice features. Oh, crap, I'm starting to sound like Donut Media. Nice. Well, don't go and quit talking about cars if you're going to be Donut Media. But so as far as ATS, they're great. Yeah, I think the problem with ATS is just a little cramped. If you don't need a back seat that's super usable, then I think ATSs are great. I always enjoyed the ATSs that I reviewed. I think I only did the Vs, if I remember correctly, but regular ones I'm sure are fantastic as well, because again, same great platform there. But that's another one where you got to check what CTS prices are going for, because if you're going to go for 2017 Cadillacs, CTS might not be that much more, and CTS is fantastic. Also, same great platform. And I did get a regular, it was the V Sport back then of the CTS, and that was very good too. So again, just always got to check the next level up, because there's not much of a price increase with the used market on those, strangely enough. And the Good Stick says, my college has a ton of EV chargers so that students can charge their cars while they're in class. There's a lot of Teslas and Nissan Leafs charging in the multi-story. Nice. That's great that they're supporting it. And especially Nissan Leafs, great little college car, because super cheap, and you probably don't need a ton of range unless you live far from home, but other than that, at least a Leaf would be a great little runaround thing for campus and stuff. That's cool. And Dave says, I have a 2013 Trax, so far trouble-free. I just don't trust the new tiny turbo engines. Yeah, I mean, time will tell for that. I mean, I remember, sitting in the presentation for the new Trax, and they were going over, they had a couple of slides of here's all the reinforcements they did to the engine. And they basically took the prior gen Trax motor and just made it even stronger, forged a bunch of stuff on the inside there for, the turbo abuse and all that of, having more power this time around and all that. But yeah, time will tell, whether or not they forged it enough and whether they beefed it up enough or not. But, I think we're seeing, especially with how Ford's getting killed with their warranty claims, companies don't want to have warranty claims. So I think there's more incentive, especially these days, to get it right from the beginning, versus I think a lot of companies before were a little more lax and like, oh, well, we'll fix it under warranty if, things aren't perfect, right out of the gate or whatever. But I feel like there's more of an intent now to really nail it out of the gate with a lot of this stuff, because they don't want to deal with this. And I think this is, again, why I think we've done a pretty good job with this in the past decade. And this is why we have the average vehicle being 12.6 years old on the road. But I mean, I'm hoping the new Trax is solid from a reliability standpoint. But you're right. I mean, a tiny little 3-cylinder. Is it 3 or is it a 4-cylinder that's like 1.3 liters or something? But either way, like a tiny little engine being pushed, if it's not built, it's going to be sketchy for sure. But I mean, they did forge it, so I'm hoping there's some solid internals there. And Luke says, I'm very open-minded to the Ridgeline. My biggest flaw is the infotainment system. Totally understand. I mean, they did fix that here for 2024. I'm not sure if you're shopping new or used, but they did fix the infotainment. So if that is the biggest drawback and you can go into a 24, that would probably be the play in my mind. I think I covered that in my new Ridgeline review this past year. I'm not sure because I drove one recently. But let me see here. Sean, thank you so much for a super chat as well. And your 10th super chat, I really appreciate that. They're asking most exciting off-roader for less than 65 grand. Truck or SUV, Ranger Raptor, Bronco Everglades, Tacoma's powertrain doesn't seem engaging, Gladiator, AT4X. I'm no pro off-roader. I've sampled a couple of those off-road, Gladiator and AT4X. And so, I mean, I've also heard Ranger Raptor is very hard to get. They just cut off, I think, ordering even for this year for this. So, excuse me, I'm not sure, if you've been able to locate one of those potentially or not. The thing with Bronco too, Bronco is going to be kind of the same thing as Gladiator, where they're both, obviously with Gladiator, it's Wrangler for much of it underneath, so I think those are a little more hardcore. Obviously, the removable doors and all the extra stuff there are going to be the things that make those a little more exciting, potentially, if you want that more raw experience and you want the extra capability versus the trucks that are trucks, just, normal trucks that have, all the off-road gear underneath. As far as most exciting, I mean, I'm trying to think of what I would get if I wanted an exciting off-roader for 65. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it sucks because the Toyotas are so expensive now for the off-road versions that it makes it tough. But I also think, like, with Tacoma, I know you said you're not in love with the powertrain there, but, like Tacoma, I think like with that, you can probably live with a non-TRD Pro. Like TRD off-road is actually pretty decent, these days as well. And, there's those types of things for people who don't need the full-blown crazy thing. I think for me, though, if I were going for an off-road oriented truck, mid-sized truck in particular, I'd probably go for the Canyon AT4X. I really liked that was like a super smooth ride. It's really nice to live with for, the 95% of the time you're not driving it off-road. And I like the styling of it better than the Colorado and, slightly nicer interior and stuff. It's pretty well done. And I mean, Bronco's great. I definitely will say I would take a Bronco over a Gladiator. I do not like the Gladiator. It's just far too unrefined, far too expensive. There's no dead pedal, which really irks me because, I mean, maybe that might not sound like a big deal if you're sitting in a parking lot or something at the dealership, but like you're on a long drive, like that really, at least for me, hurt my ankle and stuff, not having a dead pedal. And so I don't recommend Gladiator for most people unless you want a Wrangler truck. That's really the only edge that Gladiator has, and this is why I think it's struggling with sales, because the mass appeal isn't there for a regular mid-sized truck, because it's, I think, a little bit too Jeepy for their own good. I think they could also benefit from a non-Wrangler based mid-sized truck within the Jeep lineup at some point. I don't know if they'll ever bother with something like that, especially with Gladiator sales being what they are, but yeah, that's a tough one, because again, I haven't done all of them off-road, but I'd probably say AT4X. But yeah, if I was going to spend 65 grand on an exciting off-roader, it probably wouldn't be a truck and it wouldn't be a Bronco. Like the first thing that popped into my head, if that's my budget, I would probably just go Land Cruiser, honestly. Land Cruiser is great. It's very capable. It's tons of space, easy to live with. I'm actually going to have one next week for a week. I'm excited to try it out because I've only done a quick little drive, on the launch program. But me, 65, I'd probably go Land Cruiser, new Land Cruiser, because it's just so stout, and the off-road tech and all the features are pretty easy to use in the Toyota for me, as at least being, a novice at off-roading and all that. I feel pretty comfortable off-roading in Toyota vehicles. I know, again, powertrain is still the same problem as Tacoma for you. So, and it also, if 65 is the absolute limit, if you could stretch a little bit, I'd say maybe Lexus GX Over Trail, because then you get the twin turbo V6, and that is the same great bones as Land Cruiser, and I really like those. I think if I could spend a little bit more, GX is like, if I were to actually have something that I needed to go off road in, GX is probably going to be the play for me. I love those things; they were so well done, and I'm going to hopefully spend a week with one of those here, and I think about a month or two. But yeah, they're great. But hopefully that answers your question decently well. Sorry, it's not a great opinion, but out of the things you listed there, I'd say AT4X is probably my favorite if I had to live with it on a daily basis. So hopefully that helps you. Otherwise, if you just want something for a fun weekend thing or something, just get yourself a little Bronco. I think that'd be a great fun little thing to soup up and play around with. But hopefully that helps you a little bit there. Graham, thank you so much for a super chat as well. They're asking RS3 versus Ioniq 5N as a daily, taking everything into account: depreciation, range, practicality, fun. I can charge at home and don't have a commute. Okay, that's good context. Thanks for that, Graham, and thank you for the super chat as well. So, and I actually was going to talk more about RS3 in my Ioniq 5 video, but then I cut it out just because that review was so long already that I was just like, I'm going to cut some of the RS3 stuff. But so I'm happy you asked this. So I said this in the video and then I cut it for time, but RS3, if I had 65 grand to spend on a fun, 4-door practical kind of thing, it always for me was RS3 was what I would spend if I had 65 grand to spend, most likely. But I think Ioniq 5N has actually dethroned RS3 to me. Just because, I'm not sure what your life situation is as far as how much space you actually need or want or whatever, but RS3 is just really cramped. It's a small little car. It's doable. You can live with it if you must, but obviously the Ioniq 5N just blows it away from a practicality standpoint. So if you ever drive people around in the back seat, especially people that are either on the larger side or people who like to complain, Ioniq 5 is going to be easier to live with for everybody else, more cargo space, all that. And especially if you can charge at home, like you said, and you don't have a commute, that, removes a lot of the drawbacks. And I'd honestly even say, yes, even though the range isn't great, I'm not sure how much you road trip, but even still, like I said in my review, you can charge really fast in the Ioniq. So, as long as you're okay stopping every, 2 hours or maybe even a little more, as long as you're okay with that and sitting around at a charging stop for 15 minutes and then getting on the road again, like if you're okay with that, then I'd say Ioniq 5N for sure. Or honestly, if you're talking about cars that are 65 grand, I'm assuming you're comfortable, financially at least a little bit. So I would say, even if you love road tripping, I would argue get yourself a rental car for a week if you want zero compromises and take that to the beach or wherever you want to go on a road trip to, and then leave the Ioniq 5 at home if you really don't want to have any inconvenience whatsoever. But again, the charging network's getting better every day, so that to me isn't a big issue. I know for a lot of people that is obviously a huge deal breaker, but for me, I don't have that intimidation factor even with a young family and stuff. So yeah, I'd say Ioniq 5N. It is that good. Again, it comes down to personal preference. Depreciation is the one thing where I certainly will say RS3 is a better investment. RS3 will probably barely depreciate, but you're also getting like markups on most of them at dealers. If you can find a dealer that does MSRP, they're out there, but they're not super plentiful with deals on those. It's a long ordering process for those typically. So it's harder to get and harder to get at a good price versus Ioniq 5N. Someone commented that they're already offering discounts some places for those because they're not selling very quickly. And I think even Kyle mentioned it, I think last week, that he's seen that they haven't been moving super quick, if I remember correctly. So, there's that. So yes, you lose some depreciation on Ioniq 5N, but I also don't think Ioniq 5N is going to plummet quite as bad as EV6 GT, just because Ioniq 5N to me feels a little more special and it's a little higher performing. I could be wrong. Maybe there'll be 30 grand next year on the used market, but I'm inclined to think it'll be a little less. It's still not going to be as good as an RS3 from the value standpoint as far as that goes. So if you want a good investment, RS3 easily wins. Forget everything else I said. But if that's not as big of a deal to you and you just want a really fun car and depreciation's not a top priority, I'd say Ioniq 5N, is worth taking the risk on, just because it's so wild and it's faster too, and it's more horsepower and way more space, and yeah, just very, very well done. But RS3 is still magical, and if I didn't want to lose my butt on depreciation, it's probably the safer bet. So it can't go wrong either way. I guess the good answer there. No matter what you do, flip a coin. I think either way, you'll at least have a fantastically fun vehicle. And let me see here. Back to other member questions. So where was I? Cam Jam says, I'd love to test the Lucid Air, but I would have to act like I can actually afford it, so maybe not. Yeah, I know. I feel like I need to review one soon. I had the opportunity to review one, I think it was a year or two ago, but I was like, I'm not doing $100,000 EV. Like, no one's gonna watch this. And I mean, most of the time that is the case. The last Hummer EV video got, I think it's like sitting at 6,000 views or something terrible like that. No one really watches that stuff, but I feel like it's an important car just to experience and try out, just so I can compare it to other stuff in the future. So I may have to just review one of those at some point here, just for my own curiosity as well. But yeah, it's the same thing. Like, I took this Hummer EV SUV because I'm curious about, spending another week with one of them, and it's kind of a fun thing, but it's another one that's going to probably be a waste of time, unfortunately, from a time value standpoint, because it's probably going to, make me all of $50 tops in ad revenue doing that video. But let me see. So Chadwick says, I like screens, but too much for sure is for sure a thing, a real thing. Yeah, definitely. I think we'll see how long it takes before people are like, all right, that's enough screens. Let's tone it back on these, walls of screens everywhere. Goth Rocker says, I want to see the Lincoln Nautilus review. Drove it this month when my Continental went in for its yearly PA inspection and oil change at the dealer. I'm not an SUV guy, but what a vehicle, what a ride, and nice. Yeah. They are fantastic. And supposedly Lincoln has a ton of buzz with like younger people with that vehicle, surprisingly enough. I'm guessing it's all the screens. I don't know, but supposedly like there's like some metric that like kind of monitors what are the popular things, not just cars, but just popular things in pop culture. And supposedly Nautilus is high up on that list or something. I feel like I haven't seen buzz about the Nautilus that much, but apparently there's a lot of people into those. So, I mean, it's a fantastic vehicle, as you'll see in my review next month, but I didn't think it would be like driving up hype with people like it seems to be doing. And Zachary says, I want a small, sporty Ford EV BRZ competitor called the Thunderbird. Get with it, Ford. That would be amazing. That would be so fun. I'd love to see that. Yeah, and they can slap whatever name they wanted on it, as long as it wasn't the Mustang name. They can throw whatever name on, and I'd be happy with that. That'd be so cool. And thanks for joining in, Zachary. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Good Stick says, anyone who decides to buy a new GTR over a Z06 or the upcoming ZR1 is a diehard GTR fan. I agree, but GTR is special, and that is a car possibly even more so than the Z06 that is going to be depreciation proof. I mean, that thing... any of these last GTRs, if you're buying a 2024, this last model year, they are going to be very collectible because they're very rare already. Very few people even interested in them at this point as well, versus the 06 and stuff having all this excitement around it. But yeah, it's a tough sell these days. I think that's why GTR is going away. It's one of those things, go out gracefully and bow out while all the new ones come in and, provide way more car for the money, But I don't know. I still have such a soft spot for R35 GTRs that Nissan can get away with murder with that thing, and I'll probably be like, okay, it's all right. It's a GTR. Just because I'm just so thankful they finally gave us a GTR after fawning over them, with the R34s forever and ever. We finally got one in the States, and hopefully we get the next generation as well. We'll see. Luke says, my brother-in-law's Grand Cherokee L with only 37,000 miles is in the shop for the transmission. Man, see, we're just talking about this, and there's just one example out of the 95 people hanging out here in the live stream right now, and we have one that knows someone with a Grand Cherokee with an issue. It's a shame that they can't figure out the quality stuff. I want to root for them. I I know so many of the people that work at Stellantis. They're wonderful people. A lot of them I go way back with from the beginning of my car reviewing career that have been so friendly, so nice. And they're great people. It just I don't know what's going on with the engineering side, the product side, but it's got to be a tough thing from a PR standpoint. And I don't envy their jobs because it's got to be tough. Because yeah, you're trying to do your best, and then you got these things popping up, and it's not a good look, and it's tough. And V Mitchell says, thanks for the membership, Kyle. I had to talk to the boss for a while on my 60 military vehicles estate auction. Nice. Yeah, that is hopefully you were able to come out okay from that, V Mitchell. Hopefully you maybe picked up some fun stuff. I'm curious to hear how that all ended up for you. But Michelle says the Jetta is another well-priced car. My local dealer is doing $3,000 off of them too. Yeah, and Jetta is another one that sales have shot up, and that's why they're saying they're not really changing much on Jetta, and they're going to plan on keeping the price nice and low there, so that they keep that momentum going. It's another one, and I'm glad that companies are starting to get this and be like, yep, let's keep these things affordable, and then watch people line up for them. It's really great. But yeah, thanks for pointing out the Jetta. It's another one that's very well priced these days. And let me see. Jay says, thanks for all your feedback, Matt. Really appreciate it. I'll tune in next week to let you know how it went. Awesome. Hope it goes well. And let me see. Spy Harpy says, I just ditched the dark 20-inch Uber turbines on my Tesla Model 3 Performance for OEM 19 sport wheels on PS4S tires. Right, it's so much better. Car just pops with silver wheels, red calipers, and blue paint. Nice. Yeah, that's cool. And I'm not sure if you follow Engineering Explained, but he did the same kind of swap on his Model 3 Performance. And yeah, sidewalls. The more sidewall you can get, the better off you are. Less flat tires, less issues. Just good in all the ways, honestly, I think, in my opinion, at least. And I'm glad to see that some companies seem like they're putting a little more sidewall on their cars these days for some of them. I think it's again, no one likes having flat tires and having wheels be curbed super easily and all that kind of stuff, so I'm definitely team sidewall. And Ben says, hey Matt, does Beth give you a hard time about being a very analytical guy? Sometimes. Yeah, that is and this is something I think that's not only just myself, but is like a common trap that guys fall into of if Beth is saying, oh, there's some issue or some annoyance or something, instead of just like being be like, oh, that sucks, I'm really sorry. It's always like me trying to problem solve, which I know is super annoying. Not only just I know that's like a common complaint that some ladies have in general, but I think it's also could probably annoy anyone of any gender, to always be a problem solver. But that's it's how I'm wired, which I guess is part of why I guess I'm decent at reviewing cars. Is just that I love to look at things from every single perspective, and I like having all my bases covered and having every scenario covered and stuff. And I mean, it's definitely tough in other ways too, because I'm the type that also like I want to know the worst case scenario for something and prepare for that. And that can be very mentally draining sometimes, depending on what it is that I'm analyzing or whatever. But yeah, sometimes it's a little bit of an annoyance for sure to be an analytical guy for her, I think. But we've now been together 10 years, so we've really figured each other out and gotten used to each other's quirks and features and and all that. And so it's great. We just had our anniversary this a few days ago, actually, about a week ago here, and so yeah, it's been crazy. 9 years married and 10 years together. And Cam Jam says jet skis now have brakes. Cool. Well, that's good to hear. And another perk for the jet skis now. And Jordan says, I'm the guy that's brought up Ford Lithium since the concept, despite what Ford publicly says. I still predict an EV two-door Mustang, probably waiting to see what Dodge does with the Charger EV. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know what's going on with the Mustang decision-making department these days after, I was just talking this past week about the price increases again for 2025 and them ditching the performance package for the EcoBoost and stuff. I don't know what Ford's doing, but I guess, if you wanted to upset a fan base, you can't do much worse than Dodge right now anyway with the Charger EV. So only couldn't get much worse for Ford if they tried to pull something similar. But yeah, we will see how that plays out for Dodge. Things seem like they kind of delayed Charger just a little bit to make sure they got that right. Hopefully, I really hope Stellantis gets that right out of the gate, because again, they need a win, and if that can be solid from the get-go, that'll be great. But I'm also just like, I'm very excited for Charger EV still. That and the Ioniq 5N were the top two cars I was excited to review this year. So I'm hoping I get a chance to review the Charger this year, and I'm hoping that it's as good as I'm hoping it will be, because it sounds like there's some promising stuff there that they've talked about with the sounds and vibrations potentially, and all these other things. I hope that they get shifting really well done too. That would make it really, I think, extra fun, but we'll see. And let me see. Linda, thank you so much for a super chat. I really appreciate it. And it's also your 10th super chat as well, Linda. So thank you so much for the generosity. And then she says, happy anniversary. I love a hybrid Mustang. Me too. It's a shame that, that was a thing that they had planned on. They teased it, I think, back in sometime in the late 2010s here. And that never happened, obviously. But I still feel like that would have been something good, if you wanted something that was still quick. But I don't know if it was just they just figured no one would buy it or what. But yeah, I think a hybrid Mustang would be great. I'm glad to hear your feedback that you'd like that as well. And maybe, if Ford doesn't want to do the electric thing like Jordan would like, maybe start with a hybrid. Hybrids are very popular, and so maybe that would be okay with the Mustang crowd, especially if we're talking again about focusing on EcoBoost and stuff like that anyway. You're not trying to hybridize the GT. I think it'd be fine, especially if the hybrid component gave it the ability for all-wheel drive. That could especially make it appealing, and I think people would be more likely to kind of accept a hybrid Mustang if they had some kind of usability gain like that as well. But thank you again, Linda, for the very kind super chat. And Graham, thank you for another super chat as well. He says, one more about the 5N. How's the ride height / ability to deal with potholes, etc.? I own a 23 Type R and want something I don't have to be as careful with. So as far as ride height, that kind of stuff, I was never worried. I mean, I don't know exactly. I didn't even look into what the ground clearance is on it. It's not great, obviously, but it's not like so low that I was nervous about scraping anywhere. But I will say, since I appreciate everyone in these live streams, I want to give you a little behind the scenes scoop every once in a while. And this one is not flattering for me, but the 5N is the first wheel that I've curbed since college. I curbed the wheel in the 5N going around. It was not the car's fault, aside from the fact that has a pretty skinny sidewall on it. But it was just, I was in a mall parking lot where it had I was parked at the end, of course. I was like, sweet, I don't have to worry about anyone on the passenger side. And I pulled, nose in because I was in a hurry, and I just had to, I just quickly just nosed in. I do back in a decent amount of the time. But anyway, I nosed in, and there's a cement, curb there for the end of the parking lot with a little tree and mulch and stuff. And so I was lined up for that. And then directly behind me, there's another little thing like that for the next, the next row back. And so I had to back out. And then whenever I was leaving, I backed out. And then I was pulling forward, and I was mindful of that. And the thing even has, that's the one thing, as I actually answer your question, you have 360 cameras in the 5N. So that kind of helps with maneuvering and things like that. Again, it doesn't help with potholes, but at least as far as, maneuverability, it's a little bit easier than the Type R, which I don't believe has 360 cameras on it. But so I even had 360 cameras, which makes this even more inexcusable for me. But I thought, because those cameras aren't super precise, I thought I had enough clearance there, and I had to turn right, but I was angled in such a way that I was kind of really hugging that cement curb there. And then there was a car coming the other way, so I couldn't go wide into the oncoming lane to go around and give myself some extra wide, berth there. So I cut it, and I thought I had enough clearance. And then I just hear the scrape on the back passenger wheel. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was sick to my stomach. And I apologize profusely to the fleet manager lady, because that kind of sometimes can put the car out of service for a few days. And thankfully that was another one they could just patch it up with a wheel person. And so she's like, it's not a big deal, I got a great wheel guy, they'll fix it up and it'll be fine. But I felt so bad, because it's literally My favorite press car in a long time, and of course, that's the one that I screw up a wheel on. And I mean, there's lots of other journalists that, I mean, they're wrecking stuff left and right, or maybe journalist is a loose term, but people they loan these cars to that just put them through the ringer. But I was so mad at myself. I was in a miserable mood the rest of the day. I literally I actually laid in bed and drank whiskey after that. I was so upset at myself. But so a little bit of a related note there, but aside from the small sidewalls, 5N is fine. And with the RS3, you're not going to have any better time with that. Obviously, that's potentially even worse. I don't remember the exact specs, but if I had to guess from memory, I'd say the sidewall is even thinner in the RS3 versus Ioniq 5N. So probably a little bit better for that versus RS3. But yeah, I think it should be mostly okay. And you are sitting up a little bit higher, so you have a little bit better visibility than Type R too, so that might help you a little bit. But I would say 5N is not a vehicle to not have any worries in when you're driving it around and stuff. Honestly, if you want to not worry about potholes and stuff like that, you're better off getting something a little bit more crossover that's performance oriented, or something like that that has actual sidewalls on it, and something like that. But it's kind of funny ending my little story time here about curbing the wheel. It's funny because I was lined up to get an ND3 Miata this coming week. And then the fleet lady texted me, and someone scuffed the front bumper on it. And so I'm like, great. Well, I'm like, it's karma. It's because I curbed the wheel on the 5N, and now as a result, I don't get the Miata this week. And now I have to go to the body shop. And now I'm not going to get the ND3 Miata until I think September. Early September is when I'll be driving it. And then I'm going to prioritize that review, so it'll be going live early September. But I'm bummed. It's a convertible, and I'm missing prime convertible buying season for people actually shopping for these with a review and stuff. But I only have myself to blame, because I firmly believe that it is because I curbed the wheel on the Ioniq 5N, and so I'm getting it back at me with not getting the Miata due to damage. So anyway, if anyone curious about ND3, stay tuned. It's just going to be September now before I get a chance to finally drive that, which is also annoying because someone around here bought one. And so I keep seeing an ND3 almost on the daily now. And I'm like, I want to review it and I can't. So hopefully soon. But anyway, thank you, Graham, for the super chat, and apologies for the side story there. But hopefully I answered your question okay. And let me see here. So find where I was with the member question. So Austin says, hey, Matt, did you hear about the Samsung EV battery for 600 miles of range and a 9-minute recharge time? Also, Trump said he had no problem with EVs over the weekend. Interesting. I guess Musk's money is starting to convince him to not badmouth EVs, at least publicly, anymore. But that's a change for him, but I will welcome it. Not sure how much I believe it, but I welcome it. As far as the battery, I had not heard about that recent development from Samsung. I've heard about other companies, working on 600-mile batteries. That is something that a lot of companies are working on. Our Next Energy just did 600 miles in, what was that? I think it was over 600 in a Tesla Model 3 or Model S that had their battery in it. And I think also in a BMW iX, they put their battery chemistry in. And I can't remember the range they got in that, but I thought it was also very high like that, something in that same ballpark. And Toyota said 2026 for their 600-mile EV potentially, if they still stick to all that and they haven't pushed that back like everybody else. But I mean, yeah, the tech is coming. It's advancing really quickly. These second-gen EVs are really going to leapfrog the first gens, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think, it's like any other tech and how that's all evolved and how much, everything has evolved in the tech world. Cars, EVs are now the new tech thing. And this is something, when you pour billions and billions of dollars into development, you're going to have advancements like that. So, yeah, I think it's great. And, if you're talking 9-minute recharges and 600 miles, again, that's where you're going to get that EV adoption that no one thinks is possible. If all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, 600 miles is totally fine. I'm never going to have to worry about that. And 9-minute recharge times with all these chargers coming online more and more, I think this is where you're going to see this next wave of adoption if they can, again, price these things at reasonable prices. And Mike says, isn't it crazy how you have something like a fully loaded Civic Hybrid, which has basically all the same features as a fully loaded CRV, excluding rear seat air vents, and it's $8,000 less? Yeah, and I really hope that people realize that kind of stuff and are like, do I need to sit up high? No, you don't. You don't need to sit up high. Like, unless you live on a country road and you need the extra ground clearance of a CRV, you don't need a CRV. I mean, I guess the hatch and stuff, but the Civic hatch is really big that I think even for families, sure, again, if you're transporting statues in the back or something tall and obtuse, shaped, I think that's the only thing where, again, CRV can certainly be nice, but you can totally throw a stroller in the back of a Civic hatch. You can totally throw everything you need in the back of a Civic hatch. I did it, whenever I had the Civic hatch and, was transporting 4 wheels and tires in the back of that thing, no problem, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's great. And I mean, honestly, I don't know. There needs to be like an independent marketing thing or somebody who's like pointing these things out beyond just like car reviews and stuff and being like, hey, like, because Honda's obviously not going to tell you to spend $8,000 less and just get a Civic. But, I wish there was, more public facing stuff that was like, hey, look, there's other alternatives. Because a lot of people just, again, would never even think that that's the case until you actually put it in front of them and say that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's part of my job is highlighting these types of things as well. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, and hopefully people wise up to that kind of stuff and start realizing that they don't need the huge vehicles. There's no reason unless they like burning money on gas and stuff. But I see Mike says, other than the extra sheet metal, it's crazy the profit margin contrast. Absolutely. And that's why, companies are happy to churn out as many giant vehicles as people want and will buy. Good Six says, Toyota BZ4X and Subaru Solterra are a joke. How do they screw up so much when Hyundai, GM, and Tesla all make good second-gen EVs? First-gen EVs are Ford Focus EV, first-gen Fiat 500 EV. I guess you're right. In that way, it's kind of first-gen. But I think as far as mainstream EVs, I've heard a lot of OEMs talk about the current products as first gen stuff. So that's why I kind of refer to it as that. Technically, if we really want to get pedantic about it, I mean, there was like the GM EV1 and like the RAV4 EV from 25 years ago or whatever, those types of things technically were the first generation of, well, I guess we really want to go back. The first generation EVs were the ones that were built in like the 1910s, 1920s. There was actually a decent amount of electric cars back then. And then, oil came in and, just the infrastructure for that, I think, rose up faster than the EV infrastructure back in 100 years ago. And so it went away. But I mean, so there are lots of different definitions for first gen EVs. But yeah, I mean, as far as BZ4X and Solterra, I think the 2024 update really helped big time because now they will do potentially peak charge rates of 150 kilowatts, I believe now, for even the all-wheel drive ones, I think. And, just even the charge curve is better. And that was the big problem, was the curve just was really safely set up for the battery life, on those to last, Toyota lengths of time for a battery pack. And just, hopefully they haven't compromised too much on that with a better charge curve here. But now, I mean, a BZ4X, I think someone did a new charge test on the 2024s, and I think it charges about as fast as our Mach-E now. So it's not that bad. I would just avoid the 23s. Again, even that's not that big of a deal if you don't road trip. But even if you do, I think now they've actually improved it a lot. And now the fact that you can get, I think the lease deal last I saw for BZ4X was like $219 a month or something, like stupid cheap leases for a car that's over $40,000 sticker price at least. And Solterra is the same deal. I think they're both like low 200s for leasing. If you want a commuter thing and you can charge at home or at work, now is the time to get a deal on an EV. Seriously, not to sound like a salesman, but there's some dirt cheap leases. And it's like, I would rather have a BZ4X over a Nissan Versa, which probably leases for the same, like $200 a month or something, it's a lot of car right now if you find a deal like that. And even Ioniq 6 is another one that still is super tempting, even just a pickup. I mean, at one point they were $189 a month with just like the first month's payment. And that's basically it. It was like super cheap. Or maybe it was $189 with like $2,000 down, or you could do like $219 a month with like nothing down or something. But I mean, and this was like right as I was getting rid of the Bullet, I was like, if I still just want to have a car just for a day when I don't have a press car, I'm like, it's pretty close to a free car. I mean, not like $200 a month is chump change, but like with basically no money down for a brand new $40-something thousand fast charging Hyundai EV. And I think they've gone up in price a little bit because I think they've cleaned out some of the inventory they were looking to get rid of. But like, I think they're still like $239 a month. Still like, it's a real good deal. So, I mean, I don't know, all those, less desirable EVs, I think are just, really solid buys if you don't have any objections to, the various caveats of them. But Truck Car Guy says, hey, all, greetings from Arizona. Sorry for the lateness. Was out with friends. Yeah, I'm happy you're enjoying your weekend and all good. Thanks for stopping by the Truck Car Guy, and hope you're staying cool out there in Arizona too. Mike says, Matt, are you surprised GM hasn't thrown the CT5Vs, twin turbo V6, and the Silverado / full size SUVs? Honestly, that thought hadn't crossed my mind. I think, GM knows their customers pretty well. I mean, Ford was brave to ditch the V8s and go for the twin turbo V6, but I think also now GM is just probably eating their popcorn, watching the pushback on the Rams that a lot of people are having with the Hurricane motor. And I don't think GM wants to follow. I don't think they feel a need to compete there because for a long time, I mean, GM is happy not directly competing. I mean, look at how they've sat on the sidelines, much to my chagrin this entire time, while we've had Raptors and TRXs and stuff, and Chevy's had no answer. But I think that there's a lot of the times where they're okay to sit back. I mean, that one makes less sense because that's just like pure profit, money printer kind of thing. But as far as the, twin turbo trucks, I feel like, they've made a huge investment. I think it was a year or two ago. They made a giant investment in the V8 factories and basically have said that for the full size trucks, like they're going V8 till the end, which for them is 2035 right now, still is the plan for them. So at that point, we will see. I think they still might keep it around for the heavy duty stuff beyond that too. But, I think they understand people want the V8 and they are going to stick with that. And I think they're actually right. I mean, we will see what happens with Ram and see, if they can find other ways to, I guess we'll have to see if they even have to worry about fuel economy standards. We might see a huge shift in Stellantis if all these standards get thrown out and if they can pivot fast enough. Again, I don't know what their supply chains are like because typically, again, they do plan many years out. But if they have any flexibility at all to bring even the regular 5.7 back for a longer run, I kind of wonder if they're going to try and do like a new generation V8 thing at Stellantis here in the mid to late 2020s, depending on, what ends up happening here in the US and in other parts of the world, although less so for the trucks, but just for other stuff in general, sporty stuff and all that. I don't know. We'll see what they can pull off. But let me see. Jordan says EV road trips will become more of the norm once EV chargers and U.S. rest stops merge. Yeah, I think there was some progress on that because I think for a while the problem was that you couldn't put them at rest stops because the law was that federal, like interstate rest stops weren't allowed to have anything on it that was like a business, I think was the correct thing. So like selling people charging or gas for that matter, wasn't allowed at a lot of those rest stops. But I think that they have been working towards a compromise on that to enable the charging at least. So yeah, if that happens, that would make it a whole lot better for sure. But I mean, honestly, especially again, if the range gets up to these 600-mile ranges and stuff, you're not going to need these things every 5 miles. You're going to be able to have a lot more range, and you have, again, so many chargers that I think it's just going to keep getting better. It's gotten, again, it's like I talked about in the past weekly update here, it's gotten so much better in the past, even just 3 months. They've increased the charging infrastructure by 9% overall. I think we're up to like 9,000 chargers publicly for DC fast charging in the country now. So, it's growing pretty quickly. So I think that combined with if these ranges finally get to these high levels, it's not going to be a big deal. We're not going to have a charger on every corner. It'd be nice to have one on every corner just for the convenience factor, but it's not going to be this dire thing like it had been in the past. I think a lot of that is honestly, already being alienated. I've even, for me, like, again, I did the road trip in 2022 when the charging infrastructure was even worse. Drove the Mach-E to the beach and back with our slow charging, standard range, all-wheel drive Mach-E, worst range of any Mach-Es. It's like 220 miles, only does 130 kilowatt peak charge rate. It was completely fine for us. So just differences in personality and what people are willing to accept and deal with. But in personality types, again, being an analytical guy, I want to plan out all my stops, and a lot of people don't roll that way. So just differences in personality. But Jonathan says, hey, man, I have a 2020 automatic Supra and looking at a 2020 STI. I love the Supra, but it's not practical, and love the VA STI. Is this a bad move? It's going to come down to, what you love about the Supra. Because I think, if you want something practical, there's other things other than the STI. I mean, clearly, you said you love that generation. So, I mean, that's, a very strong, pull there. But I think also if you want something a little more practical, that's more exciting. I mean, I'm sure everyone that's a regular viewer here can see this coming from a mile away. I would go for GR Corolla, because for me, GR Corolla, gives you obviously better practicality than a Supra, and has the old school WRX kind of vibe to it. I know they're probably impossible to test drive, but you can get your hands on a GR Corolla, even test drive a used one, because they'll probably be a little more lax on that, I'm hoping. If you could test drive a GR Corolla, I don't know, again, how that fits in with your pricing that you're looking at, but I'm assuming you might have a little bit of equity there if you got an automatic Supra and you're going down to an STI. But yeah, I would say if you can, and if it makes sense for you, try a GR Corolla. I would rather have that over the STI myself, even being a Super X fan. But I mean, I'd say STI is still fine. Just I wouldn't mod it a bunch, or really at all, honestly. And just be prepared for the fact that they're finicky sometimes, and they, those motors are terrible on gas. They're, not always very reliable, and, they have some flaws. They're still fantastically fun cars, very well done. But yeah, it's just going to come down to exactly, what you miss about the Supra. I mean, STI is a very fun car, obviously. So, you're still going to be in something that's, far from boring. But, Supra is just shorter wheelbase, rear-wheel drive. Obviously, it's very tail-happy. It's way more thrilling. I mean, if you told me, which one is the more fun vehicle, absolutely Supra, hands down, more fun. But, STI gives you fun in the winter with all-wheel drive, and, has a little more of that practicality factor while still having a very fun vehicle. But I think, again, GR Corolla is a little more exciting. And just even from a reliability standpoint, even though I'm not in love with the Golf R, I'd probably recommend Golf R, honestly, over STI as well. If you want something special too, like we were talking about RS3s earlier, you can pick up a used RS3 with an extended warranty on it or something. That could also be, again, I don't know how that compares price-wise to a 2020 STI, probably more expensive, but could be another thing. It's still not super practical. Again, it's a pretty small car, but gives you at least those 4 doors, those extra seats, a little bit of a bigger trunk and stuff. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. But yeah, if you don't need the extra practicality though, and you don't need the all-wheel traction, I'd rather have a Supra over STI personally, but just comes down to what you need. Austin says, hey, Matt, do you really think Ford is trying to sabotage the Mustang with the price bumps and removing the sport package from the EcoBoost? I think the sport package thing, I could potentially see that, again, clearing the way for an SVO or something potentially. So I kind of want to give them the benefit of the doubt there. And again, I think the EcoBoost community is so mod friendly anyway that, a lot of people probably are just completely content to just do things in the aftermarket for that. So that one I don't think necessarily is sabotaging it. But as far as the price bumps on the GTs, I think it's just a lot of it is, again, like I was talking about at the beginning of this live stream, if you were here earlier, it's companies trying to maximize profit and trying to see what they can get away with before people push back. And if Mustang sales take a real dent here for 2025 as a result, then maybe they will check themselves a little bit. But as of right now, there's no competition. And I mean, it's probably safe to assume the Charger's not going to be cheap, at least MSRP wise. Again, we'll see how well they sell and if they discount them down the road or what. But, even the gas Charger, when that comes, with a Hurricane twin turbo inline 6 and stuff, it's not going to be cheap. Probably will. I mean, I'm guessing it's going to start. Well, maybe it'll start under 50. I don't know. But like, it's going to be expensive. So I think that there's no competition. Ford knows that, and they know that if you want a V8, they're the only game in town now for a brand new V8. and one of the few vehicles with a manual these days. They know that they have all the power there. They got all the leverage. So, it's either you pay it or go to the used market or go buy something else, and we'll see how much they care about the drop in sales. But I mean, I feel like it's going to have to be a cut in sales, especially since there's no real improvements for 25 to go along with the price increase. So I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting. And also, I see Graham had a few other comments there to go along with his super chat. He says, pretty much summed up my thoughts exactly. I went 23 RS3 to Type R, and now I'm either going back to RS3 or 5N. If I can get a 5N for 55 grand with the lease pass through, I'll do it. I actually want the Ioniq 5N over the RS3, but I'm terrified it'll only be worth 45 grand next year. That's a very valid concern. So if you can lease it, absolutely. It sucks that they're not leasing very well right now. It's like $1,100 a month for a lease, which is stupid for, I think anything honestly at 65 grand, that seems really high, but especially, with the $7,500 tax credit, knocking off of that and stuff, it should definitely be cheaper. So maybe time will be on your side with that and you can get a better deal if you're not in a hurry. Wait it out a few months for a 5N, and then maybe you'll finally get a decent lease deal, and then that could probably be the better way to go for that. I did just notice we're over 2 hours here already, so I'll try and wrap this up here, and we can wrap up our Sunday evenings here. So let me see. Truck and Car Guy says, we're having a lot of our Pacifica vans being recalled at my work, and it's throwing a wrench in things. Man, I'm surprised Pacifica is getting recalled too with Stellantis, because I feel like this has been around for a while. It's a pretty tried and true Pentastar V6. There shouldn't be any new issues with that. That's strange. I'll be curious what they're getting recalled for. I'll have to look that up. Thanks for the heads up on that, but that's surprising to hear, because I would consider Pacifica, outside of the Sienna, Pacifica is probably going to be the most reliable one in my opinion. I mean, I guess Odyssey is probably pretty high up there too, but I mean, they're all kind of pretty tried and true tech with all those vans. So they're all pretty safe. But Cam Jump says almost double the viewership than last week. Wonder why? Yeah, who knows? There's always different factors. I think I'd certainly alienated a bunch of people with veering into the political talk a little bit last week. So glad we were able to be a little more staying away from that this week, even though I'm happy to talk about it, but just obviously a turn off for a lot of people. But Cam Jum also says, Dad, you had the time to watch the new Car Wow video, but they did a drag race between 296 GTB and Ruelto, and it was tied. Wow, that's impressive. And yeah, I mean, I hadn't had a chance to really talk about my experience with the 296 GTB, but if you follow me on Instagram, I did a little reel about how I took a 296 GTB around Fiorano back in April, and it is very fast. I see your comment about it being scary fast. Yeah, they are really, really impressive. I would love to do a review on one at some point. I only had 3 sessions of 3 laps each, I think it was. Maybe it was 4 sessions, 3 or 4 no, it was only 3 sessions, I think. Well, maybe it was more than 3 laps. It was like maybe 4 or 5 laps each session, so not a ton of time, but even just that sample, really getting to push those 296s. Once I learned Fiorano pretty well in the second run especially, I was able to really get on it pretty good there. I mean, 296 is fantastic. I know it's not like the most impressive from a like setup standpoint. A lot of people aren't super excited about a plug-in hybrid Ferrari with a 6-cylinder, but man, that thing flies. It's so good, and it sounds fantastic too. It sounds like a mini V12. I love the 296. I mean, I love Ferrari V12s. That's still my favorite. But if I couldn't have a Ferrari V12, I would totally rock a 296 happily. If I had the disposable cash. Oh man, that would be amazing. Or just the cash period for a 296. That'd be amazing. Ruelto seems very promising as well. I just think the Ferraris always sound better in my opinion. But that's interesting. I'll have to check that out. Thanks for the heads up. Michelle says sidewall for the win. My Passat is a base model with 16-inch wheels. Rides very well, especially on the highway. I'm sure that's a great setup, and especially Passats are so comfortable regardless of the wheels they have on them, but especially with the 16s. Yeah, you are gliding on air with that thing. I'm sure that's probably such a great daily driver. Yeah, I still think that generation Passat didn't get enough love. Let me see. I see we got Richard Simmons here is spamming us big time. So let me get that cleaned up here. And all right, so Apologies for that, everyone. And let me see. I also missed the other super chat. Sorry about that, Sean. It says 991 GT3 or C806, all things considered. I don't know. I'd probably say that, if you're thinking about depreciation and stuff like that, the Porsche is probably going to be a better investment. So I'd probably go Porsche. If the pricing upcharge for a GT3 isn't significant to you over Z06, if there is a price difference there that's significant to you, then I would say Z06. If you don't care, though, again, especially from a resale value standpoint, GT3 is probably going to be the better buy. I mean, Z06 should be a pretty solid one too, but Corvettes do depreciate, and Porsches usually don't very much. So I feel like that's kind of probably the safer bet with the Porsche, but both are fantastic. I just haven't even driven the 991 GT3. The newest GT3 I've driven was 997 generation, so that's the only one I can really weigh in on, unfortunately. Maybe someday Porsche will send me press cars or invite me on stuff. Let me see. I see there's just all kinds of spam here. I'm surprised because usually this stuff gets filtered out because you have to actually be a subscriber to get all that stuff. But anyway, Linda says, one final super chat just to wish you a good week going forward. Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate that. And man, Richard is trying to really go hard here with the with all the spam in here for some reason. Anyway, not the best end to the live stream here, but yeah, so I think we've mostly caught up. Let me see. There's a couple more questions. Don't want to leave any members here behind. So let me see quickly. You caught up here. So Shred Car Guy says, I was joking with my coworkers. I just bought 2 new tires for the Magnum, and the tires have a 65 sidewall. That is a very nice sidewall there. Dylan says, Dodge pissing off their customer base. If they had to come out with a smaller displacement V8 hybrid alongside the EV, it wouldn't have hurt as much. Yeah, I think that's certainly true. But I mean, that's twin turbo inline 6. That motor is going to be really good if the mod community actually supports it. It's going to be... That thing's going to make a ton of power. I mean, look at 2 JZs and stuff. I mean, it could have that kind of a potential if the support is there and it's made that well. We'll see. But Austin says, hey, Matt, what do you think are the actual chances we see a Celica or MR2? I don't know. I've been hearing a bunch of rumblings about both, but I feel like that is also something that is still hard for me to believe that both of those things are happening or even one of those things is happening. I hope that they are. It's really hard for me to say what the actual chances are because, if I didn't see all the hype in recent stories about this, potentially being a thing, I'd say there's, very little chance. I mean, I think they said basically that MR2 looking, electric sports car that they're doing, like that is happening. It's just going to be after all the other stuff. They're saying probably like 2030 for that one. But if we're talking actually gas powered, cheap little MR2, which has also been a separate rumor, that, I mean, seems unlikely to me, especially if it's not like a K car size, like the Honda S660s and stuff in Japan. But if that's, if we're talking about something like that, I mean, it still is going to be hard for me to believe until it's actually here. But I hope that it happens, but it just seems still unlikely to me. Dave says, my local Dodge dealer's lot is full of Hornets, 500Xs, Compass, Renegade, all unappealing vehicles. They are in trouble, I think. I mean, well, at least they noticed it pretty early on because, I mean, the 500X, they quit making those. I think the last year we have here in the States is 2023's, I believe. The Renegade, they discontinued that here this year. Compass, is a little nicer, but I think those are selling a little bit better, but still, not great. And I see a lot of Hornets on lots as well. So just, again, the options just make them too high, and it's just, that's kind of a bummer. Let me see. Jordan saying, with Toyota's impeccable hybrid history, would a collaboration with BMW to bring back the i3 make sense now? I don't know. I feel like i3 was kind of always a niche vehicle, and I don't think BMW wants to go down that road with a vehicle like that. There is talk that the i3 name will come back just on something that's like a 3 Series, just electric. But I don't think we'll see anything like the original i3, unfortunately, even though that'd be cool. And Cam Jump says, fun story from this week. It's 4:30 a.m. and I'm snoozing. My obese cat strolls into my room and leaps onto my side, and now I have a bruised rib. Man, that is intense. That is a very heavy cat. That's impressive. But sorry to hear about the bruised rib. I hope you feel better soon. My dad actually just fractured a couple of ribs this week as well, having a fall. So yeah, ribs. Seems like that is not a fun thing to have hurt ribs. So hope you're feeling better soon, Cam Jam, and try and take it easy if you can. And yes, still went on the jet ski. So I guess not taking it that easy, but glad it wasn't too bad for you there. And all right, so couple more questions and I got to wrap it up here. Steven says, as new parents for a 7-month girl, we're looking into scouting out Honda and Toyota dealers for RAV4s and CRVs. Do you have any tips on how to approach / what questions to ask for the best experience? Well, first, I would say make sure you bring your car seat with you, and see how it fits in there, and then put you and your significant other in that passenger seats to make sure you're all comfortable and it works with a car seat installed. Also, if you happen to have any friends that have forward-facing car seats, if you're planning this as a longer-term purchase, because obviously 7 months, you got the smaller little thing. It's not quite as demanding as the bigger ones, and especially when they're rear-facing and stuff. So you have as many car seat variations as you can scrounge up, that would be kind of the play there, just to make sure that everything's good. Or even if you just want to take measurements of how far out, a typical rear seat, comes out, and then, try and position the seat appropriately. So I try that out. The one thing I will say about CRV over RAV4 for parents, especially with, car seats, and especially if you have still like a little carrying thing to pop them into, is that the CRV back doors open like 90 degrees. They open wider than the RAV4 doors do. So it is CRV, and there's one or two others that also open super wide like that. But it really makes a difference getting kids in and out, assuming you have enough space next to you when you're parked or whatever, for opening it that wide. But it's really a nice thing. The CRV is very well thought out for families, I will say. RAV4 obviously is still very well thought out and very family friendly. It's the top selling thing outside of the F-150 out there. So clearly a very good choice too, either way you go. But yeah, I think, it just comes down to, RAV4 gives you some features CRV doesn't, and there's that whole thing there. But I'd say, as far as, questions to ask for the best experience, I think the only thing I will say when you're going to the dealer is, a lot of the salesmen, whether they're trying to be friendly or they have ulterior motives, they love to talk the whole time on a test drive. And I would say, if you can, try to get on a test drive by yourself, or just say like you really want to focus on like driving the car and cut the chit chat and the small talk, because you want to listen for rattles, you want to listen for road noise, you want to focus on what you're doing, and you're not focusing when you're having a conversation, especially with a stranger. You're not able to focus on what you're really feeling as much. So I think the less noise and distractions you can have to worry about, you can just focus on the drive. I think that's going to be the best test drive. That obviously is my recommendation for anyone doing any test drive. Try and get it by yourself if you can, but at the very least, try and drive in silence, as awkward as that might be, just to really get a feel for what it's actually like, not with some guy yapping in the passenger seat or in the back seat about what do you do for a living, all that stupid stuff. Just try and focus on the drive itself to give you your best impression possible. Because a lot of stuff, if you're small talking with somebody, you might gloss over stuff, or you might not pick up on stuff that you would have otherwise noticed in a dead silent car. So that's the only thing I kind of always say to people when they're test driving and all that. Otherwise, I don't think there's any other questions or things you need to look out for. It's really just sitting in everything, trying out everything, making sure everything kind of vibes well with you, and it works for everyone and what they need. So good luck there with the car shopping. I hope it goes well for you. And Good Stick says, do you think it's worth it to get an old EV for cheap, like a first gen Nissan Leaf or the original Tesla Model S, as they can be had for dirt cheap money, even though the Nissan has a 12-hour charge time? It comes down to your usage case. Once again, if you only need 50 miles of range or something. The only thing about the Nissan Leaf is those batteries, since they are air cooled and not water cooled, they degrade very quickly and they don't hold up very well long term. So Leaf, I'd be a little more leery of. I think the Model S is a solid buy, especially if it's had a battery replacement, or if you can see, the battery life on that. As far as degradation, I think that would be, probably the better choice, honestly, between the two, or any of the other EVs that are just water cooled for the batteries. I think are probably going to be a little bit safer than the Leaf there. But, again, if the price is right for the Leaf, it might make sense as well too. You just have to, go into it knowing the battery might be a little iffy on that. But I see agents also mentioning, $10 a month leases on Leafs in Colorado. Only in Colorado, unfortunately. But if you happen to be in a state that has killer lease deals on Leafs, that could be a really great lease too. And all right, so sorry about all the spam there, guys. Hopefully there's no more of that. But Goth Worker says, I think Ford each year will raise the price of the Mustang, no competition, and people will pay. Yeah, that's, I think, the sad reality, unfortunately. So, all right, and I see the comment section got completely ruined with someone who's going to the trouble of making 1 million usernames, strangely enough. This is bizarre. I haven't had anyone do this in a while. They must have subscribed ahead of time for all of these to actually work too, because you have to be a subscriber to comment, unless I forgot to check that. This is strange, so not sure, but this is an incredible amount of determination on their part. And I see Gothroger saying the SVO there for the Mustang, and Austin's thankfully, this guy showed up at the end. Usually, like, YouTube picks up on this many comments as well and will automatically just stop people from doing that stuff. This is kind of strange, but anyway, hopefully he's finally been weeded out here and find something better to do with his life. But all right, let me see. I think we've all caught up here. So Austin says, have a good week, everyone. And so anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in here, and sorry for all the spam there at the end, but hope you all have a great week this week. Stay tuned for some more videos. It's going to be more mundane stuff here. I posted all the sporty stuff here, so it's going to be more ordinary stuff. Hopefully you guys all enjoy that as well. And hope you have a great week here. Stay cool if you're in one of these warmer states especially, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care.